Chapter 415. After leaving Chun Tianyu's side, Lin Ye's group of 3 started to grind points. Sun Wuyu's speed was the fastest, and his senses were the strongest. He was left to search for stragglers or weaker demonic beasts, while Lin Yi continued to reap the lives of those demonic beasts, increasing his own strength at the same time. After 2 days of killing, Lin Ye's group of 3 familiarized themselves with the strength of the demonic beasts in the Holy Spirit Mountain Range. Powerful existences like the elemental wolves from before were also unusual creatures, and there weren't many of them. Although most of the demonic beasts were stronger than the demonic beasts outside, they were still acceptable. Although it took a lot of effort to deal with those demonic beasts, it wasn't to the extent of being defeated. As for demonic saint-level beasts, they were extremely rare. Even after Lin Yi asked Sun Wuyu to search for them, they failed to find any demonic saint-level beasts. Most of them were in the demonic king realm, and their strength was between 7 tribulation half-true saint and 9 tribulation half-true saint. In these 2 days of killing, Lin Yi had killed more than 59 tribulation half-true saints and more than 107th and 8 tribulation half-true saints, earning him close to 1,000 points. In addition to the medicinal herbs and natural treasures he had obtained, Lin Ye's accumulated points had reached a total of 3,400 points after exchanging them. If there was a ranking list with Lin Ye's points, he would definitely occupy the first place. Time trickled by. Very quickly, the 3rd day had arrived. Lin Yi and the other 2 were in the process of chasing a dragon. They had entered deep into a dense forest. Following the river, Lin Ye's group of 3 followed closely behind with solemn expressions. Walala, not far away, in the deep river, a flood dragon was drenched in blood, and it was sprinting in extremely fast speed. This flood dragon is too fast in the water. This won't do. We must force it to a place where there is no water. Gritting his teeth, Lin Yi waved his hand, indicating Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul to continue chasing after the flood dragon, while he took a deep breath and circulated the water domain in his body. Walala! Lin Ye's comprehension of the water domain was extremely high, and in a dozen breaths' time, the water in the river flowed backward, forming a water dragon. Huh! With a light shout, Lin Yi waved his hand. The water dragon roared, circled, and rushed toward the Jiao dragon. Amidst the biting cold aura, even Sun Wuyu and the other man were stunned. Rumble! The water dragon's speed was extremely fast. Every time it swept past a section of the river, its body would grow a little bigger, and the river water would be absorbed into its body. In less than a dozen breaths, the water dragon caught up with the flood dragon. It immediately opened its bloody mouth and bit down. Roar! Feeling the cold water vapor, the flood dragon suddenly swung its spiked tail at the water dragon's head. Poochie! However, as soon as the tail hit the head of the water dragon, it went straight in without causing the slightest ripple. The water dragon, on the other hand, crashed into the flood dragon with countless streams of water. Boom, boom, boom. How powerful was the impact of dozens of tons of water? Almost instantly, the flood dragon was knocked away like a kite with a broken string. It crashed into a tree, and with a crisp sound, it knocked down a row of trees. Roar! After knocking down the trees, the flood dragon fell heavily to the ground and let out a mournful cry. The injuries on its body became more obvious, and blood kept flowing out. Walala! After knocking the flood dragon away, the water dragon completed its mission and turned back into a stream of water, pouring into the river. Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and solitary spirits figures flickered as they swiftly arrived before the flood dragon and surrounded it. This flood dragon was about to break through to the sacred beast level, and the price of its inner core was shocking. The inner core alone could be exchanged for 2,000 points. That was why Lin Yi chased after it so hard. Of course, the flood dragon that was about to become a sacred beast was also very powerful. After a night of fighting, they finally defeated it. However, it was lucky that it happened to come across a river, so it rushed into it and escaped. After chasing it for so long, Lin Yi thought of using the power of the realm to slap the flood dragon out. Phew, Captain, this flood dragon's vitality is too strong. Shall we attack together? Sun Wuyu said in a low voice. If something happens again, we'll be in trouble. Okay. Hearing that, Lin Yi nodded slightly and agreed. The flood dragon's vitality was so strong that even a normal sacred beast would not be able to withstand it. If they continued to delay, they would be in trouble. Blazing flames appeared, and the supreme sacred weapon's aura oppressed the flood dragon. In an instant, the flood dragon's eyes were filled with despair. A supreme sacred weapon, a divine will saint, and a sacred beast. No matter how strong its defense was, or how strong its vitality was, it could not withstand it. However, just as the sharp sword chi was about to land, a series of noises suddenly rang out. This is the sacred aura. Brothers, come quickly, there's a fight here. It smells like a sacred weapon. Hee, after searching for so long, we finally found a living person. Yuelen, you did well. Letting you lead the way is indeed rewarding. Soon, a series of voices, mixed with the sound of footsteps, rang out. Hearing those voices, Lin Ye's brows furrowed. His attack suddenly stopped. He had a feeling that there was someone familiar among those voices. Lin Yi rolled his eyes and directly withdrew the raging crimson flames. He only coldly looked in the direction of the voice. Seeing that Lin Yi had withdrawn his attack, Sun Wuyu also stopped attacking and landed behind Lin Yi. As for the flood dragon, Lin Yi and the rest were not worried. The voices came from the flood dragon's descendants. Judging from the voices, they were also disciples who came for the assessment. Naturally, they would not let the flood dragon go. When those people came closer, the flood dragon would die. The flood dragon also noticed this. Its body curled up slightly, and it kept looking around, looking for a way to escape. However, after a while, when a group of more than 40 people appeared, the flood dragon's eyes were filled with despair. There were 20 people in the group, and they were all saints. The aura in their bodies was like a volcano that was about to erupt, and the flood dragon's heart was filled with despair. There was a huge gap between a saint and a half-saint. Even a demon would find it difficult to fight across realms. Dozens of saints suddenly appeared in front of it. How was it going to fight? Lin Yi sized up the group and could not help but be surprised. Half of the 40 people were recruited by Du Yuelen and him. The other 20 were outer sect disciples of Cebu Gakuin. Strange. Aren't these seniors here to steal the freshmen's points and make things more difficult? Why are they working together? Chapter 416. It's a dragon. It's about to break through to the Beast Saint realm. We're so lucky. A dragon's inner core can be exchanged for 2,000 points. We've struck it rich. Seeing the dying flood dragon, Du Yuelen and the others immediately became excited, completely regarding the flood dragon as something that was already in their bag. As for why the dragon was injured and the rest of the people, they did not care at all. In this world where strength was everything, only strength could convince people. After the excitement, the leader of the outer sect disciples from Cebu Gakuin glanced at Lin Yi and the rest. He frowned and looked at them with disdain. Since you've caught a dragon for me, I'll let you off today and not take your points. He waved his hand impatiently and shouted, "Get out of here!" The corners of Lin Ye's and the other two's mouths curled up as they sized up that disciple with interest. How dare a middle-stage saint talk to him like that? He was digging his own grave. Of course, if Lin Yi did not say anything, he would not do anything. Suddenly, Du Yuelen turned his head to take a look. When he saw Lin Yi and the other two, he immediately revealed a shocked expression as he blurted out, "Lin Yi." The next moment, Du Yuelen's mouth twitched, and he was furious. He was not as strong as Lin Yi on the spatial flying dragon. He was almost forced to kneel by Lin Yi and humiliated in front of hundreds of people. This made him furious. At this moment, when he saw Lin Yi and the other powerhouses around him, he could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. His eyes were red as he glared at Lin Yi. Noticing the change in Du Yuelen, the leader was surprised and asked, "Yuelen, do you have a conflict with this guy?" "It's more than a conflict. Du Yuan gritted his teeth and said, I want to eat him alive. It's this guy who humiliated me in front of 100 people and the elder. As he spoke, the 20 outer sect disciples all turned their heads to look at Lin Yi, their eyes filled with shock. The leader frowned and stared at Lin Yi. He suddenly laughed and said, If that's the case, don't even think about leaving. The leader walked slowly toward Lin Yi and the rest. The aura in his body surged like the sea. This person was Peng Lin, a subordinate of Du Yuelin's elder brother in the outer sect. After meeting Du Yuelin, he did not dare to disobey Du Yuelin's orders. Therefore, when he heard that Lin Yi had humiliated Du Yuelin, Peng Lin immediately used all his strength to capture Lin Yi and hand them over to Du Yuelin's punishment. If he did a good job, he might be appreciated by Du Yuelin's. TSK, you're actually so blind. You're courting death. The other disciples laughed when they saw Peng Lin step forward. They were not worried at all. After all, before Sun Wuyu made his move, their realms were lower than Sun Wuyu's. They could not see through Sun Wuyu's true strength. Moreover, Theta Scarabii had said that no one in this batch of disciples had broken through to the Saint Realm. Therefore, they subconsciously thought that Lin Yi and the rest were all in the Sage-to-Be realm. Kneel down and beg for mercy, or be beaten into submission by me. Peng Lin slowly approached Lin Yi and the rest. His expression was cold. Du Yuelin said hatefully, Brother Peng, don't go easy on him. Just kill him. Cripple him and the guy next to him. Leave the girl for me. At this point, Du Yuelin looked at Solitary Spirit again. His eyes were filled with greed. Understood. Peng Lin nodded slightly and agreed. When he turned to look at Silent Soul, he was shocked. He did not expect such a beautiful woman to exist in this world. Her charm was amazing. Peng Lin shook his head violently. When he came back to his senses, he no longer looked at Silent Soul. Instead, he looked at Lin Yi and Sun Wuyu fiercely. Brats, the two of you die. As soon as he finished speaking, Peng Lin leaped up and waved his right hand. A long spear appeared and emitted a whistling sound. It was mixed with a violent force and smashed toward Lin Yi and Sun Wuyu. Do it. Facing such an attack, Lin Yi was not worried at all. His expression was indifferent, and his lips moved slightly. Following his words, Sun Wuyu was like an unsheathed blade. The aura in his body suddenly exploded, and his sword will soared to the sky. He pressed his palm across the air. In an instant, thunder rumbled, and the space within 100 feet trembled. The power of a sage was so terrifying. If they were in the heavenly purification territory, Sun Wuyu's attack would be more powerful. However, the power of space here is stronger. In order to shatter space, the strength required was also stronger. What's going on? What a powerful force. Oh no, that person is a mid-stage sage. Sensing the powerful force, everyone's expression changed drastically. Peng Lin, especially, hurriedly took a few steps back. However, once Sun Wuyu attacked, how could he let him go? His attack had already locked onto Peng Lin. Fight! Peng Lin gritted his teeth and roared. The energy in his body surged like a river and poured into the long spear. Roar! 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 The long spear was like a dragon, carrying a thunderous force as it charged towards Sun Wuyu. Annihilation. Sun Wuyu's expression was indifferent as he spoke. Sword radiance. As the last two words were spoken, the shocking thunder and the vibrating power from before suddenly transformed into sharp sword auras. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they pressed down on Peng Lin in a densely packed manner. Puchi. The speed of the sword radiance was so fast that before Peng Lin could react, the endless sword radiance had already covered him, drowned him, and pierced through his body. Puff! Peng Lin only felt the pain in his body like a tidal wave, constantly stimulating his mind. He let out a shrill cry. Blood kept spitting out, and his body trembled uncontrollably. He could not stop it at all. This caused Peng Lin to be extremely shocked. He looked at Sun Wuyu with eyes full of shock. He could not believe that a new disciple who had just passed the assessment could defeat him in one move. What was more frightening was how did Sun Wuyu break through to the mid-stage sage in such a short time? Peng Lin's heart was filled with despair as he trembled. Du Yuelin and the other outer sect disciples were dumbfounded. Their mouths were slightly agape, and they were shocked. They could not believe what they had just seen. Peng Lin was already the most powerful person among them. If even he was not a match for Sun Wuyu, what else could they do? In an instant, more than 40 people looked at Sun Wuyu with eyes full of shock and despair. Sun Wuyu looked coldly at Peng Lin and said indifferently, "Destroying you is as easy as flipping my hand. How dare you provoke me? How shameless!" Given Sun Wuyu's strength, killing Peng Lin was a piece of cake. Chapter 417. Upon hearing Sun Wuyu's words, Peng Lin's expression darkened. In any case, he was a senior student of the Sacred Martial Academy, and his talent was not bad. Even among the outer sect disciples, he was in the middle. However, he had never expected that he would not even be able to withstand one blow from a freshman. Why aren't you getting lost? Sun Wuyu coldly swept his gaze over the crowd and suddenly shouted out softly. His voice was so cold that it made Du Yuelin and the rest tremble. They could not help but take a few steps back. Peng Lin's face turned red. He staggered a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood. One had to admit that Sun Wuyu's deterrence to them was too strong. You're not allowed to leave. However, before they could leave, Lin Yi took a step forward and said indifferently, "Since you want to cause trouble for me, how can you leave unscathed? Either you transfer all your points to me, or you die here." Lin Yi's voice was cold. As he spoke, he did not look at Du Yuelin and the rest. He only stared at the Flood Dragon. For some reason, Lin Yi felt that the Flood Dragon had undergone a special change. Especially when Peng Lin was defeated and spat out blood. The Flood Dragon's aura seemed to have grown stronger. If not for the fact that Lin Yi's divine will had reached the sage level and his senses were not sharp, he would have suspected that he had sensed wrongly. However, as soon as Lin Yi finished speaking, Du Yuelin and the rest were in an uproar, especially the 19 seniors. Their faces were terrifyingly gloomy. This time, their mission was to snatch the freshmen's points. Now, they had not managed to snatch a single one. Instead, the freshmen had snatched all their points. If word got out, how were they going to survive? If they had been asked to leave, they could have tolerated it. After all, Sun Wuyu's strength was too strong. They did not dare to make an enemy out of him. However, if they were asked to hand over their points, they could not bear to do so. Those who had not entered Sibu Gakuin would not be able to imagine the use of points. After experiencing it, they valued points greatly. Even a 10,000 inscription sacred weapon was not as valuable as points to them. Asking them to hand over their points was tantamount to killing them. In an instant, everyone's faces darkened as they stared at Lin Yi. The entire place fell into silence. Everyone's strength gradually surged, and they were ready to strike at any time. Although they believed that they were no match for Sun Wuyu in a one-on-one fight, if they were to attack together, Sun Wuyu would definitely be no match for them. They were all saints, and there were 7 mid-stage saints among them. They were confident that they could hold Sun Wuyu back. After all, no matter how talented one was, it was rare for someone to defeat more than 10 geniuses of the same cultivation by themselves. Ha ha ha. Sensing the changes in everyone's aura, Sun Wuyu suddenly laughed out loud and looked at everyone coldly. If you want to fight, then come. As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Wuyu shot forward explosively like an arrow that had left the bow, and he directly enveloped those 7 intermediate stage Saint Realm experts. Huh, raise your sword. Sun Wuyu became excited. He raised his hand and waved, and the biting cold sword chi immediately covered him and the other 10 people. After a few days of cultivation, Sun Wuyu had broken through to the mid-stage Saint Realm. This was his first battle as a mid-stage Saint Realm expert, and he wanted to test his strength. As for the other 9, he would leave them to Lin Yi to deal with. Boom, boom, boom. Loud explosions sounded as Sun Wuyu and the other 10 people fought fiercely. Their figures were blurry, and no one could see them clearly. Peng Lin, who was lying on the ground, saw this scene, and then looked at Lin Yi. Suddenly, a bad premonition rose in his heart. Even though Peng Lin had the premonition, the others did not. Initially, they had thought that Sun Wuyu would fight the 19 of them alone. Seeing that Sun Wuyu had only pulled away 10 people, they became excited even though they had the upper hand. Their attention turned to Lin Yi. That brat is his friend. He's just a fifth tribulation half-true saint. Brothers, as long as we catch him, we can capture him without a fight. Suddenly, a sharp voice sounded. In the next moment, the 9 seniors, Du Yuelin, and the other new disciples gritted their teeth and charged towards Lin Yi. At this moment, Lin Yi was the key to leaving this place safely in their eyes. Swish! Swish! 9 saints, how fast was their speed? In just a few breaths' time, they had already closed in on Lin Yi, and instantly they were overjoyed. However, they did not see that Lin Yi's eyes were filled with disdain. Ah, die for me. After getting close, the 9 saints laughed loudly and stretched out their hands towards Lin Yi. Swish! Buzz! However, just as their hand were about to touch Lin Yi, a sharp sword light suddenly appeared. Ah! As the sword light flashed by, the 9 saints felt a sharp pain in their arms, and they couldn't help but let out shrill cries. Their arms were dripping with blood, and they instantly retreated over 10 steps. Who is it? Which scoundrel is hiding in the shadows? Get out here! Looking around, the 9 saints glared at their surroundings. Seeing this scene, Du Yuelin and the others' faces changed. They stopped their attacks and looked around cautiously. Ha ha! Crisp laughter sounded, and Lin Yi suddenly leaped up. With a wave of his right hand, the Crimson Flame Supreme artifact appeared, and the Supreme Holy Armor appeared on his body. His aura soared crazily. One sword illuminates 19 prefectures. The Heavenly Sword 12 styles coupled with the Crimson Flame's holy might illuminated Lin Yi, and it was as if the god of war had descended. This hiss! What is going on? This brat is just a fifth tribulation half-true saint. How can he be so strong? At this time, Du Yuelin and the others finally realized that the sharp sword light from before was actually Lin Yi's doing. This made them extremely shocked, even more so than when they saw Sun Wuyu. However, their shock and daze wouldn't let Lin Yi go easy on them. With a solemn expression, Lin Yi swung the long sword in his hand. In an instant, heaven and earth were filled with cold light, and the sharp sword light soared into the sky, sweeping across the horizon, and swept past Du Yuelin and the others. That sword light was especially powerful, and the area it covered was even wider. None of the 30 people could avoid it, and they were all slashed by the sword light. After the sword light hit, the entire space froze. Du Yuelin and the others stared blankly at Lin Yi, and fear gradually filled their eyes. Pung pung pung. In the next moment, blood spurted out from their bodies, and Du Yuelin and the others were like people made of blood. They were sent flying and crashed to the ground. Their auras were weak, and it was as if they would die at any time. Lin Yi had used a lot of strength in that sword light. Other than the few saints who were able to stand up, the rest collapsed to the ground, and their bodies twitched uncontrollably. But the pain on their bodies was nothing compared to the fear in their hearts. A fifth tribulation half-true saint killed more than a dozen saints with a single sword. Chapter 4:18. One slash, just one slash, and the 9 saints were severely injured. Du Yuelin and the rest collapsed on the ground, unable to muster any strength. Looking at Lin Yi in horror, Du Yuelin and the rest of the new students were filled with shock. They could not believe what they had just seen. No, how could this be? The 9 saints looked ferocious as they stared at Lin Yi, their eyes filled with hatred and fear. They didn't dare to believe it, but the endless pain reminded them that this was really happening. Sun Wuyu saw this from high up in the sky and struck out with his palm. Powerful saint aura surged out and instantly forced the 10 opponents in front of him to retreat. He laughed out loud. Captain is mighty. Hearing this, the 10 saints who were attacking Sun Wuyu suddenly trembled, but they did not dare to turn back. They had also sensed the piercing sword radiance earlier, but they did not dare to turn back. They were afraid that Sun Wuyu would seize the opportunity when they were distracted. Since that's the case, I won't hold back. Void sword essence. Laughing loudly, Sun Wuyu put his index and middle fingers together and suddenly drew out, pointing at the 10 saints. Swoosh! In an instant, a shocking strand of sword intent appeared out of thin air, and it swept through the area where the 10 saints were. The sword essence was extremely fast. Before the 10 saints could react, the sword essence swept past them, and their bodies trembled violently. Puff! Almost instantly, the 10 saints trembled and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Their faces were ghastly pale, and they could not help but half kneel in the air with fear in their hearts. Sun Wuyu did not even draw his sword. He only waved his 2 fingers, and the piercing sword essence had injured them, causing them to be horrified. Although their injuries were not very serious, and they could still use martial arts if they fought with their lives on the line, it would definitely affect their foundation. Moreover, they already understood that Sun Wuyu's strength could suppress the 10 of them by himself. Unless 20 of them attacked together, they could not suppress Sun Wuyu. But when they turned around and saw the other heavily injured people, their faces completely darkened. Damn, where did these 2 people come from? How can they be so powerful? Could they be monsters? That guy can suppress us with his mid-level true saint cultivation, but that kid looks like he's only a 5th tribulation half-true saint. How could he defeat 9 true saints? Their faces darkened as they stared at Lin Yi, their eyes filled with disbelief. A 5th tribulation half-true saint who could injure the 9th great sage with a single sword strike, and several 19 tribulation half-true saints. This was too unbelievable. No one would believe it. If they hadn't experienced it themselves, they wouldn't have believed it either. TSK, you're just asking for trouble. Sun Wuyu sneered. Hurry up and hand over your points. Everyone fell silent. They were very unwilling, but they didn't dare to go against Sun Wuyu's words. They all raised their heads and looked at Lin Yi. They could already tell that although Sun Wuyu's cultivation level was high, he still listened to Lin Yi. Sensing everyone's gaze, Lin Yi said indifferently, hand over your points or suffer. Du Ellen and the other new students opened their mouths, but no tears came out. In the past 2 days, after many battles, each of them had only obtained a little more than 30 points. They understood how precious points were. Now, they only had a little more than 1,000 points. Naturally, they were unwilling to hand it over to Lin Yi. As for the older students, they knew the importance of points and were even more unwilling to hand them over. But at this moment, they were meat on someone's chopping block. They didn't dare to resist and could only remain silent. After a long time, some of the new students endured the pain and knelt down, shouting, Brother Lin Yi, seeing that we're all new students, please leave us some points. Yeah, we're all new students. We should help each other. Ha ha. Hearing this, Lin Yi's expression was indifferent, and he said coldly, why didn't you say that you should help each other when they were about to attack? Now, you're saying that you're all new students. You're really thick-skinned. Lin Yi's expression was cold. The new students gradually lost hope and turned to look at Du Ellen. Their eyes were filled with resentment. They had no enmity with Lin Yi. The only reason they had a grudge with Lin Yi was because of Du Ellen. Now that their points were about to be snatched away, how could they be nice to Du Ellen? Lin Yi took a step forward and shouted in a deep voice, hurry up and hand over your points. Hearing the sudden shout, everyone's hearts trembled. The dozen saints and Peng Lin involuntarily withdrew their left hands and covered the bracelets on their wrists. Sensing this, Lin Yi nodded slightly. He was sure that the bracelets had the function of exchanging points. At this point, Lin Yi waved his hand and motioned to Sun Wuyu. Sun Wuyu, go and look around. Don't let anyone come near. Yes, Captain. Sun Wuyu grinned. His figure flashed and instantly disappeared before everyone's eyes. Seeing this, Peng Lin and the rest could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. Originally, they were still hoping to meet the seniors of the inner sect to help them. Although they were arrogant, They knew that the inner sect disciples were much stronger than them. There was no need for them to be afraid of Lin Yi and the rest. They had seen the inner sect disciples fight before. With a flip of their hands, heaven and earth would change. But Lin Yi's move had extinguished all their hopes and cut off their path of survival. If they wanted to leave this place safely, they had no other choice but to hand over their points. Lin Yi and Silent Soul walked slowly towards Peng Lin and said indifferently, "You're their leader. You'll start first. Hand over your points to me." With that, Lin Yi stretched out his arm and revealed the bracelets. "You actually figured out the use of the bracelets so quickly." Seeing this, Peng Lin's expression changed drastically and he felt despair. Theta Scarabii had explained the use of the bracelets to them before, but she did not tell the freshman. Lin Yi's performance made Peng Lin tremble in fear. From his point of view, Lin Yi did not look like a freshman in terms of strength or demeanor. He looked more like a senior. "Cut the crap. Hand over your bracelets. Hand over your points." Lin Yi waved his right hand lightly, and a sharp sword glow appeared and quietly pressed against Peng Lin's neck. In an instant, Peng Lin felt a chill run down his neck, and his whole body shivered, as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. I'll hand it over." Clenching his teeth, Peng Lin could only stretch out his left hand and touch Lin Yi's bracelets. Wong! A screen appeared, and the number 6400 was displayed. It was extremely eye-catching. Looking up, Peng Lin felt despair. He had originally agreed to participate in the hunt with Theta Scarabii because he had used up too many points and did not have enough. Chapter 419. The maximum amount of points transferred was 80%. With a beep, the points in Lin Yi's bracelet suddenly increased by 5120 points. Nodding his head in satisfaction, Lin Yi loosened his right hand and dispersed the sword light. Peng Lin heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, although he had lost his points, at least he was still alive and had not suffered any serious injuries. As for the points that he had lost, he could only snatch them from the hands of the other freshmen. Peng Lin did not believe that all of the freshmen in this batch were as heaven-defying as Lin Yi. If that was really the case, then he might as well find a big tree and kill himself. Seeing that Peng Lin had admitted defeat and handed over his points, the other saints did not resist and handed over their points to Lin Yi. However, they were not as strong as Peng Lin and did not have many points in their hands. At most, they had 4,000 to 5,000 points. In Lin Yi's hands, there were only 3,000 points left. However, there were many of them. With 19 people, even if each of them handed over 3,000 points, that would still give him about 60,000 points. This was only the senior students. Adding on the 30 freshmen, each of them handed over more than 800 points. That would give him close to 30,000 points. After this round of point harvesting was completed, Lin Yi's points had already reached 100,000 points. Peng Lin and the others looked on enviously, their eyes turning red. Even the senior students only had 30,000 to 40,000 points at most. To them, 100,000 points was definitely a huge sum. They did not even dare to think about it. Moreover, it was still the trial phase. The treasures that could be exchanged for points were very good, and the prices were much cheaper than when they were officially enrolled. The use of 100,000 points was not inferior to 300,000 or even 500,000 points. If it was not for Lin Yi's strength that completely terrified them, they would not have been able to resist the urge to charge at such a huge sum of money. After harvesting the points, Lin Yi was satisfied. 100,000 points were enough for the three of them to use for a period of time. Moreover, only 1/5 of the 15 days had passed, and they had already obtained so many points. Perhaps when the 15 days were over, Lin Yi's points would break the million mark. At that time, not to mention 3 people, Lin Yi could even provide for 30 people. However, the satisfied Lin Yi did not realize that the bloody smell in the air was getting weaker and weaker, while the Flood Dragon's aura was getting stronger and stronger. "Brother," Peng Lin said helplessly, "we've given you our points. Can we go now?" "Scram." Lin Yi nodded slightly and said indifferently, "If you provoke me again, your end will be even worse." Hearing this, The expressions of Peng Lin and the others were extremely strange. Without Lin Ye's threat, they didn't dare to provoke Lin Yi anymore. He was too strong, and they didn't even have the courage to resist. Only Du Yuelin's eyes were filled with hatred as he glared at Lin Yi. However, when Lin Yi looked at him, he lowered his head and didn't dare to look at Lin Yi. Noticing this, Lin Ye's lips curled into a disdainful smile. He waved his hand and chased Peng Lin, Du Yuelin, and the others away as if they were puppies. Peng Lin and the others didn't dare to stay any longer and ran away in less than 10 breaths. Master, with so many points in one go, you won't have to worry about living in Cebu Gakuen in the future. Seeing everyone leave, Silent Soul covered his mouth and chuckled. It seems that Cebu Gakuen is nothing special. These are just ordinary disciples. Lin Yi shook his head and said, Du Yuelin's brother is only in the top few hundred of the saint transforming list, but he has so many saints under him. I'm sure he's not weak. He's at least a late-stage saint. And these are the outer sect disciples. The inner sect disciples are at least at the peak and invincible saints. They are our real opponents. However, to get so many points in one go is a pleasant surprise. We can exchange them for something. At this point, Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. A horse wouldn't get fat without eating at night, and a man wouldn't get rich without a windfall. Lin Yi didn't mind such a pleasant surprise. He would get as many as he could. Captain, I'm back. Suddenly, Sun Wuyu rushed back. Captain, I saw those guys leave. Did they get their points? Sun Wuyu asked eagerly as soon as he returned. Almost 100,000 points. We've made a killing this time. Silent Soul's face was red with excitement. So many points? Sun Wuyu blinked his eyes in ecstasy. I didn't expect them to be so rich. TSK, there are a total of 200 seniors. If I can snatch their points, wouldn't I be able to get close to 1,000,000 points? Here's some million points. How long will it last the three of us? So what if it's 1,000,000 points? Lin Yi glanced at Sun Wuyu and the other man and said helplessly, let's exchange it for some treasures and elixirs. In addition to the usual expenses, the 1,000,000 points will soon be spent. All right, let's not talk about points. Let's get rid of that dragon first. Jiao Dragon's inner core, another 2,000 points. As he spoke, Lin Yi slowly walked towards the dragon. Raising his head, Lin Ye's brows furrowed. He saw that the flood dragon was lying quietly in the bushes as if it was dead. But if it was dead, its body was like a volcano that was about to erupt. It contained a shocking amount of power. This serpent dragon seems to have undergone some changes. Frowning, Lin Yi slowly moved forward. Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul also noticed that something was wrong. They took a closer look and shouted at the same time, Captain, Gongzi, be careful. This dragon was only injured earlier, but it's not moving now. There must be a conspiracy. Sun Wuyu's face was solemn. Suddenly, his body flashed, and he came to Lin Ye's side. He whispered, Captain, let me go and test it. After a moment of silence, Lin Yi thought that Sun Wuyu was quite strong. The dragon was only in the Demon King realm and could not hurt Sun Wuyu. He immediately nodded and motioned for Sun Wuyu to go forward. Sun Wuyu did not hesitate and slowly approached the dragon. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. As Sun Wuyu got closer to the dragon's aura gradually became stronger. Sensing this, Sun Wuyu squinted his eyes and was ready to attack at any time. 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet. When Sun Wuyu and the dragon were only 10 feet away, something strange happened. Roar! With a roar, the dragon suddenly raised its head and rushed towards Sun Wuyu like an angry dragon coming out of the sea. Ah, come on! Sun Wuyu had already noticed that something was wrong. With a roar, he opened his palms and slapped the dragon's head. Ah! Chapter 420. Bang! His palms collided with the flood dragon's head, and in that instant, a strong shockwave exploded. Even Lin Yi and Silent Soul were sent flying by the shockwave. Roar! In the next moment, the flood dragon let out a mournful roar. Good heavens, it actually broke through again. Sun Wuyu only felt extreme pain in his hands as a huge force flowed through his meridians, wreaking havoc. He could not help but be surprised. He carefully sensed it, and when he felt the thunderous power in the flood dragon's body, he was shocked and angry. The flood dragon that was originally in the Demon King realm had broken through again and reached the Sage realm. The flood dragon's body was already extremely strong, and after breaking through to the Sage realm, he could not gain any advantage in a physical clash. With that thought, Sun Wuyu's figure quickly retreated, and he suddenly pulled away from the flood dragon. Roar! The flood dragon circled, and the aura in its body rose crazily. In just a moment, a strong sage aura filled the entire space. Even the rest of the people who were dozens of miles away felt the terrifying pressure and hurriedly fled. Interesting. Lin Yi touched his nose and looked at the flood dragon with interest. At this critical moment, the flood dragon broke through again, showing that it was quite talented. In this case, its inner core must be quite rare, and with the inner core of a saint-level flood dragon, the price would be even more tempting. The inner core of a Demon King-level flood dragon was 2,000 points, but the inner core of a saint-level flood dragon was 50,000 points. There was a difference of dozens of times between the two. Roar! Just as Lin Yi was looking at the flood dragon roared several times, and its body suddenly emitted a blood-red light. The moment the blood-red light appeared, it completely enveloped the flood dragon. In the next moment, the flood dragon's aura suddenly rose. The roar became louder and louder. Hiss! Could it be that something strange has happened? Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Silent Soul frowned and looked at the flood dragon in surprise. Silent Soul rolled his eyes and suddenly said, Gongzi, I've seen this situation in a book before. It seems to be something called blood rage. Under such circumstances, the demonic beasts of the dragon clan can unleash their full power. It's all right, Lin Yi said indifferently. It has just broken through to the saint realm. No matter how strong it is, it will not be a match for Sun Wuyu. Sun Wuyu, don't compete with it in physical strength. Understood. Sun Wuyu nodded slightly. His expression was extremely solemn as he involuntarily shook his hand. After that collision, Sun Wuyu's entire arm was numb, and it had yet to recover. This shocked him. Even without Lin Ye's order, he did not dare to compete with the flood dragon in terms of physical strength. Using one's weakness to attack the enemy's strength was the stupidest thing to do. Roar! All of the blood-red light was injected into the flood dragon's body. In the next moment, the flood dragon turned into a blood flood dragon. Its huge eyes were like copper bells, and they were filled with anger. Its claws and scales were filled with a blood-red color, making it look rather terrifying. Seeing this, Lin Yi suddenly thought of the blood mist that had dissipated earlier. He immediately understood that the flood dragon had mutated because it had absorbed too much blood aura. In an instant, Lin Ye's expression was extremely strange. In this case, the reason for the flood dragon's mutation was because of him and Sun Wuyu. This was the cycle of cause and effect. Annihilation, sword ray. Sun Wuyu took a deep breath and waved his palms. In an instant, the saint's aura suddenly crushed the space in front of him. Crack! Buzz! A sharp sword ray suddenly appeared in the void and immediately swept across, slashing heavily on the scales of the blood-red flood dragon. Bang! This is it. The sharp sword ray collided with the scales, and immediately, intense sparks flew from the friction. The strong force even caused the blood-red flood dragon to retreat a little. However, after taking the attack, the blood-red flood dragon roared and became even more ferocious. It swung its tail, and the scales on the tail flickered with cold light as it suddenly swung towards Sun Wuyu. Bang! 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 In an instant, Sun Wuyu and the blood-red flood dragon fought fiercely. Every time he waved his palms, he could shatter the void and stop the blood-red flood dragon's attack. However, Sun Wuyu's attack could not hurt the blood-red flood dragon. It could only stimulate the blood-red flood dragon and make its power more violent. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi and Silent Soul could not help but look solemn. Sun Wuyu was also very worried. He did not know how to defeat the blood-red flood dragon. However, the more anxious Sun Wuyu was, the more chaotic his attacks became. He could not effectively attack the blood-red flood dragon at all. In just a moment, the blood-red flood dragon had gained the upper hand and suppressed Sun Wuyu. This made Sun Wuyu's expression extremely ugly. Ever since he broke through to the saint level, he had never been at a disadvantage. Today, he lost in front of Lin Yi, which made him lose face. Void sword intent. In a rage, Sun Wuyu burst out with an even fiercer attack than before. The sharp sword intent soared to the sky. Even the blood-red flood dragon could not completely ignore it. In an instant, the battle between the two was back to the same starting line. Lin Yi carefully stared at the blood-red flood dragon. After a long while, he finally realized that something was wrong. The blood-red flood dragon was covered in blood. Only a scale on its back was not stained with blood. It was still purplish-black. That scale, there's a problem. There's definitely a problem. Squinting his eyes, Lin Yi was sure that there was a problem with that scale. Looking up, he saw that the blood-red flood dragon was still fighting with Sun Wuyu. Lin Yi had a thought, and the supreme armor appeared on his body. His body flickered, and like a nimble fish, he quietly approached the blood-red flood dragon. Seeing this, Sun Wuyu's eyes turned. He knew that Lin Yi had a plan. He immediately increased the intensity of his attacks, desperately entangling the blood-red flood dragon. Roar! In an instant, the blood-red flood dragon was madly struggling against Sun Wuyu. It did not notice Lin Yi's actions at all. Very quickly, Lin Yi stealthily touched the black scale on the back of the blood-red dragon. He immediately sensed a special energy fluctuation. Sure enough, there's definitely a problem here. With a cold look in his eyes, Lin Yi did not hesitate. He clenched one hand into a fist and pointed the other with his index finger. Celestial Emperor Fist, Level 7. Sky-destroying finger. The two martial techniques exploded at the same time. In an instant, a strong fist wind and a faint golden shadow of his index finger, which contained a violent, thunderous power, suddenly fell on the black scale. Bang! A clear sound rang out. Under Lin Yi's all-out attack, the black scale did not even last for a breath time before it shattered with a loud bang. Roar! Roar! Chapter 421. The scale shattered, and the blood-red flood dragon let out a shrill cry. The blood-red color on its body gradually faded, and it returned to its original color. At the same time, the flood dragon's body suddenly went limp, and it fell heavily to the ground. The light in the flood dragon's eyes gradually faded. As its heavy eyelids fell, the flood dragon's breathing stopped abruptly. The flood dragon that had just broken through to the saint realm was dead. It died just like that. Seeing this scene, Sun Wuyu was stunned. He did not expect that the blood-red flood dragon that he had painstakingly fought for so long would die so easily. For a moment, Sun Wuyu admired Lin Yi even more. Although Lin Yi's cultivation level was low, the strength he displayed was much stronger than a saint. It should be dead. After rubbing his bracelet and sensing that his points had increased by 500 points, Lin Yi was sure that the flood dragon was dead. There was a huge difference in strength between a saint and a half-saint. Killing a half-saint demon king would only give him a few dozen points, but killing a saint demon venerable or demonic saint would give him hundreds of points. If he could kill a demonic saint that was a whole realm higher, he would get double the points. After sensing this, Lin Yi immediately made a decision in his heart. Before he broke through, he could not let Sun Wuyu deal with those saint demon saints. If he killed them alone, he would get double the points. Why wouldn't he do it? Sun Wuyu, dig out the inner core. I'm going to take a look at the points. After killing the flood dragon, Lin Yi did not bother with the corpse. In a flash, he returned to Silent Soul's side and sat down cross-legged. Sun Wuyu painfully skinned and pulled out the tendons of the flood dragon, while Lin Yi rubbed his bracelet and picked out the items that could be exchanged. The use of points in Cebu Gakuen was to increase one's strength. Now that the difficulty of the treasures that could be exchanged for in the trial had decreased, the more points he needed, the more points he could exchange for. After glancing at the martial techniques and sacred weapons, Lin Yi turned his attention to the cultivation techniques and elixir pills. Presently, Lin Yi's martial techniques were mostly saint rank. He did not need to learn new ones at all. There was even a pile of supreme sacred artifacts. Even the 10,000 inscription sacred artifacts were of no use to him. He could only throw them away and not waste his points. Only pills and cultivation techniques could make Lin Yi spend some effort on them. Of course, Lin Yi would also be tempted if there were excellent martial skills and supreme sacred weapons, but they were rarely seen. Relatively speaking, Lin Yi was more in need of elixirs and cultivation methods. Resurrection Pill. After consuming it, it can prolong one's life for a month. No matter what kind of injuries one suffers, one will not die. If he could take it together with the Soul Awakening Pill within a month, his injuries would be completely healed. Points required: 5,000 points. Soul Awakening Pill. After consumption, it can be used together with the Soul Recovery Pill to recover from injuries. Points required: 5,000 points. Saber Intent Pill. After consuming it, it can strengthen one's understanding of the Saber domain. Points required for exchange: 1,000 points. Sword Heart Pill. After consuming it, it can strengthen one's comprehension of the sword domain. Points required for exchange: 1,000 points. Heavenly Light Pill. After consuming it, it can strengthen one's comprehension of the radiance domain. Points required for exchange: 1,000 points. Darkness Pill. After consuming it, it can strengthen one's comprehension of the darkness domain. Points required for exchange: 1,000 points. Fire Essence Pill. After consuming it, it can strengthen one's comprehension of the fire domain. Points required for exchange: 500 points. Dream Spirit Pill. After consuming it, it can allow one to enter a dream and comprehend martial skills in a more efficient way. Points required for exchange: 10,000 points. Breaking Calamity Pill. After consuming it, it can ignore any bottlenecks and obstacles, allowing one to break through a realm. It can only be consumed by those below the Saint realm. Points required for exchange: 10,000 points. Note: one can only consume it once in one's lifetime. This Cebu Gakuin is really scary. They even have a Breaking Calamity Pill. Lin Yi's breathing quickened when he saw these pills. Although he did not need most of the pills, there were still some high-quality ones, especially the Breaking Calamity Pill, which could allow one to break through a realm. When he reached the Ninth Tribulation Half-True Saint Realm, he only needed to consume one Breaking Calamity Pill to enter the Saint Realm. The Dream Spirit Pill was also quite useful. When one reached the end of Saint Realm martial skill, it was extremely difficult to take the last step. With the help of the Dream Spirit Pill, it would be much easier. As for the other healing pellets, life-saving pellets, and pellets for comprehending domains, they were useless to Lin Yi, but to Sun Wuyu, Solitary Spirit, and the others, they were quite useful. Hence, Lin Yi did not hesitate to exchange for 2 Breaking Calamity Pills, 5 Dream Spirit Pills, and many other pills that could help one comprehend one's domain. As for the life-saving pills, Lin Yi did not exchange for them. After all, this was a trial, and it would not be too dangerous, so he did not exchange for them. He had to admit that the points came and went quickly. After exchanging for these pills, he had spent 90,000 points. Lin Yi, who was originally carrying 100,000 points, became a poor man once again. Without any more points, Lin Yi did not look at the cultivation technique anymore and closed the screen. Buzz! The next moment, 5 silver bottles suddenly jumped out from Lin Yi's bracelet. Lin Yi's points suddenly dropped by 90,000. Seeing the points disappear, Lin Yi felt pain in his heart, but seeing the pills, he was happy again. Opening the bottle, a rich medicinal fragrance wafted out. This medicinal fragrance, it's a Supreme Saint Pill. Sun Wuyu exclaimed and quickly took out the dragon's inner core and rushed to Lin Yi's side. Silent Soul looked at the silver bottles and asked curiously, "What kind of pills are these?" 3 Dream Spirit Pills, 2 Breaking Calamity Pills, and the other pills are for comprehending one's domain. Lin Yi said indifferently, "Silent Soul. You can use them when you break through to the Saint Realm. Sun Wuyu, these are the Sword Heart Pills. I'll leave them to you. Try to break through the shackles of the Sword Domain as soon as possible and comprehend the domain ability." Patting Sun Wuyu's shoulder, Lin Yi directly handed the entire bottle of Sword Heart Pills to Sun Wuyu. Sun Wuyu was very excited. He opened the silver bottle and was immediately excited. "Thank you, Captain. With these Sword Heart Pills, I'm confident that I can break through the shackles of the Sword Domain. After reaching the Saint Realm, one could take pills to speed up the comprehension of the domain. Of course, to break through the shackles and comprehend the domain ability, one still needed talent." Lin Yi did not hide anything. After distributing the pills to Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu, he directly turned in the dragon's inner core and received another 50,000 points. This time, Lin Yi did not exchange for pills. Instead, he saved them and prepared to exchange for cultivation techniques next time. It had to be said that Theta Scarabii was very considerate of them. Most of the choices she gave them were treasures and pills that could be used by half-saints and early saints. Even Lin Yi needed those resources. Chapter 422. After running for a long time, Peng Lin, Du Yuelin, and the others finally breathed a sigh of relief after confirming that there was no one behind them. At this moment, all of their faces were filled with grief and indignation, especially the new students. They had followed Du Yuelin to protect themselves and gain more points. However, they never would have thought that after just 3 days of the trial, they would only have 200 points left out of the 1,000 points they had. They had reached the upper limit of being robbed. They did not resent Lin Yi, but Du Yuelin. In their opinion, if Du Yuelin had not provoked Lin Yi would not have made a move on them. As for Peng Lin and the others, although they were depressed, they were not worried. In this assessment, most of the disciples' strength was normal. They did not believe that every one of them was Lin Yi. Since Lin Yi had snatched their points, they could go snatch the points of the other new students. Motherf asterisk Kerr. How can that bastard be so strong? Letting out a long sigh of relief, Du Yuelin couldn't help but spit softly, his face full of resentment. He, Du Yuelin, was talented and had outstanding strength. Coupled with Du Yuetian's reputation, many people treated him with respect. Only Lin Yi did not spare him a glance. It was because of this that Du Yuelin had clashed with Lin Yi. But Du Yuelin did not expect Lin Yi's strength to be so strong. Even if he had brought the Cebu Gakuin's outer disciples, Lin Yi had easily annihilated them. Cough, cough. Peng Lin coughed a few times and said helplessly, "He can defeat the 9th great sage with a single sword, and he can display holy might as a 5th tribulation half-true saint. He also has 2 supreme artifacts. His identity is not to be underestimated. Du Yuelin, before entering Cebu Gakuin, you better not provoke him. Damn it." Du Yuelin slammed his fist on the ground and gnashed his teeth in anger. "If it wasn't for this brat, I would have dragged that girl over. It's all that bastard's fault. When we enter the Institute, I will definitely teach him a lesson." Roar. Rumble. Almost at the same time that Du Yuelin's fist smashed into the ground, not far away, a roar mixed with a strong shockwave quickly swept past. Bang, bang, bang. That gust of wind was extremely powerful. Coupled with the fact that Du Yuelin, Peng Lin, and the others were already injured, they were simply unable to resist it and were sent flying one after another. Damn it, how did this happen? Du Yuelin's face was deathly pale, and he was extremely nervous. They had just ridiculed Lin Yi a few times when an attack came, which made them feel horrified. Heavens, just how strong is that person? He's so far away, yet he can still hear what we're saying. For a moment, everyone was incomparably terrified and panicked. Once again, they rushed forward in a panic. Peng Lin grabbed Du Yuelin and dashed forward. Peng Lin and the others only stopped when they were 10 miles away. They were panting heavily. Terrifying. What realm is that guy at? Panting heavily, Peng Lin was especially shocked in his heart. He was curious about Lin Yi's identity. No matter what, they were still mid-level Saint Realm experts. However, When facing a fifth tribulation half-true saint like Lin Yi, they had no thoughts of resisting. The gap between their realms was too big. Ordinary people simply couldn't cross realms to fight. But Lin Yi was able to suppress them to the point where they didn't even dare to move. This was simply a legend. If they hadn't experienced it personally, they wouldn't have believed it. Damn it, damn it. Du Yuelin's heart was filled with envy and anger, and he cursed again. Shut up. However, this time, Du Yuelin had just cursed when more than 10 curses suddenly sounded out. In an instant, Du Yuelin was stunned. He raised his head in a daze and looked in the direction of the curses. He saw that the 30 people he had brought over were glaring at him with an extremely furious gaze. There seemed to be flames dancing in their eyes. What are you doing? Du Yuelin was furious. Be asterisk starred. I brought you here out of kindness, but now you want to rebel? Rebel? Bah. The 30 people were enraged when they heard Huang Xiaolong's words. They cursed. You said that you wanted to cooperate with us earlier. Why are you saying that you want to rebel now? Be asterisk starred. I think you want to use us as cannon fodder. Be asterisk starred. If you didn't insist on provoking Lin Yi, how could our points have been snatched away? That's right, you be asterisk starred. You've caused us a lot of trouble. In an instant, Du Yuelin's face was like a pig's liver. He was incomparably embarrassed. Enough. Suddenly, Du Yuelin roared. This daddy has never begged you. If you don't want to stay here, scram. Ha. Leave? The group of people laughed loudly. Be asterisk starred. You cheated us of so many points. How can we let you leave so easily? After exchanging a glance, the 30 people stepped forward and surrounded Du Yuelin. More than 30 piercing cold auras erupted, and they were like giant mountains pressing down on Du Yuelin. Oof. With a muffled groan, Du Yuelin staggered a few steps back. Traces of blood flowed out from the corners of his mouth. Although Du Yuelin was a peak 9th tribulation half-true saint, he was facing more than 29 tribulation half-true saints. He couldn't resist at all. Be asterisk star, give us back our points. The 30 people were filled with righteous indignation as they glared at Du Yuelin. You're courting death. Before they could do anything, Peng Lin's figure flickered, and he appeared in front of Du Yuelin. With a shake of his shoulders, an invisible aura rippled out and dispersed the pressure with a loud bang. Who? In an instant, Du Yuelin heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly retreated several steps and hid behind Peng Lin. Scram if you don't want to stay here, Peng Lin said indifferently. If you want to die, I don't mind helping you exercise your bones. As he spoke, a powerful holy aura appeared and enveloped everyone. Even though Peng Lin was defeated by Sun Wuyu in a single move, he was still a mid-stage true saint. He only needed to say a word to suppress the 30 people. Sensing this, the 30 individuals all began to despair. Initially, they thought that Peng Lin and the others were too weak. Now, it seemed like it wasn't Peng Lin who was weak, but Lin Yi and the others who were too strong. Let's go. Gritting their teeth, the 30 people looked at each other, and none of them were willing to follow Du Yuelin. They glared at him and left together. Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, the group of 50 people shrank to 21 people. Chapter 423. After a long while, Du Yuelin came back to his senses and sighed. This is all my fault? Hearing this, Peng Lin and the rest fell silent. They also wanted to say that it was Du Yuelin's fault, but Du Yuelin's brother was their boss, and they did not dare to offend him. Otherwise, if Du Yuelin complained when they returned to the sect, how could they have a good life? Those bastards are really ungrateful. I brought them along out of goodwill to prevent them from being bullied by the other seniors, but they actually framed me like this. Du Yuelin's face became more and more ferocious, especially that Lin Yi. He's too arrogant. When the trial ends and we enter Cebu Gakuen, I'll definitely ask my big brother to beat him to death. Hearing this, Peng Lin could not help but twitch his mouth. He had a premonition that Lin Yi would definitely enter the inner sect. When that time came, they would have nothing to do with Lin Yi. Of course, Peng Lin was not stupid enough to say this out loud. He just let Du Yuelin vent alone. The rest also sat down cross-legged and began to regulate their breathing and recover from their injuries. After a while, Du finally finished venting. We saw that the rest were regulating their breathing. His face immediately turned gloomy. How could he not see that these people did not want to listen to him? Phew! Du heaved a sigh of relief. He also understood that during this period of time, he still had to rely on these people to safely stay in the trial. He could only suppress the anger in his heart and said to Peng Lin, "Brother Peng, what should we do next? These points are very important. How many more can we get? What should we do? Of course we continue to snatch points." Peng Lin gritted his teeth and said, "I don't believe that all the new students this time are monsters like Lin Yi. We have 11 intermediate saints and 9 saints here. Isn't it easy to deal with those who have not broken through to the saint stage?" "That's true." Du nodded slightly. "I'm in the top 10 in our city. The other 9 people are similar in strength to me. They can't compete with saints at all. Other than that, Lin Yi, we don't have to worry about anyone else." "Phew, since Lin Yi snatched ours, then we'll go snatch others. While you're at it, shift the blame to Lin Yi and say that it was because of him that the others were robbed." At this point, Du face became even more ferocious. He looked like a demon and was extremely terrifying. Peng Lin's brows furrowed slightly as he looked down on Du even more. If Du was not Du Etienne's younger brother, Peng Lin would have thrown him out. "There's no need to do that. It'll only backfire." Peng Lin shook his head and said, "Our goal is only to snatch points. Points are the most important thing to us. Don't cause trouble. All right." Seeing Peng Lin's unyielding attitude, Du could only suppress the anger in his heart. "Then, should we announce Lin Yi's strength to the public and gather more people to deal with Lin Yi together?" Du was not willing to see Lin Yi alive and well, and try to make trouble for him. The corner of Peng Lin's mouth twitched, and he could not help but want to slap Du with his right hand as he said helplessly, "No, if we let them know how strong Lin Yi is, they'll definitely be more careful. It'll be difficult for Lin Yi to snatch their points." Our points have been stolen. If they don't, won't they get more points than us?" "That's true." Du was extremely selfish and did not wish to see others get more points than him. He immediately laughed sinisterly and said, "Then let's wait for them to be robbed by Lin Yi before we tell them. When that time comes, I don't believe that 200 seniors won't be able to deal with that bastard Lin Yi. I'll definitely make him lose all standing and reputation." Just as Peng Lin and Du were discussing how to snatch the points of the other freshmen, scenes of seniors and freshmen snatching points were happening in every area of the divine spiritual mountain range. A day passed, and under the control of several palace masters and Elder Theta Skirbii, almost every senior had encountered a new student, and intense clashes had begun. Although it was said that those who passed the Cebu Gakuen were all geniuses and monsters, the freshmen were facing geniuses and monsters who had already entered the Cebu Gakuen. The difference in strength was too great, and they were powerless to resist. Only a few top geniuses who had broken through to the Saint Realm with the help of the divine spiritual mountain range's resources were able to escape this calamity and preserve their points. As for the rest of the 9 tribulation half-true saints, as well as some unlucky freshmen, their points were snatched away. It was extremely pitiful. Almost every group of 200 senior students had more than 5 mid-stage Saint Realm experts, and including the inner sect disciples, there were 3 late-stage Saint Realm experts. Encountering them, even a Saint Realm freshman would not be able to escape. It could be said that among all the battles that had occurred on the first day, only Peng Lin's group had encountered Lin Yi and suffered a miserable defeat. The rest of the senior students had completed their tasks. Lin Yi, Silent Soul, and Sun Wuyu, who had performed outstandingly, had successfully attracted the attention of the various elders. Buzz! Sharp sword intense soared to the sky. Sun Wuyu leaped into the air and raised his right hand. Thousands of sword intents surged around him. These sword intents were so shocking that they seemed to be able to pierce through the sky. Clap, clap, clap. Crisp clapping sounds rang in the air. Lin Yi sized up the sword intents and said with gratification, You've already condensed 90,000 strands of sword domain. After a period of time, you can attempt to break through the shackles and comprehend the sword domain's divine ability. At that time, your strength will be even stronger. Hearing this, Sun Wuyu was incomparably excited. Initially, he had thought that it would take a long time for his sword domain to break through to 90,000 strands. Who would have thought that he would be able to break through so quickly with the help of the sword heart pill? Squinting his eyes and feeling the sharp sword aura, Sun Wuyu was quite proud. These sword intents were shocking and extremely sharp. Sun Wuyu was certain that if he were to face Peng Lin and the rest again, he would only need one move to defeat all 20 of them. Congratulations! Silent Soul was also happy for Sun Wuyu. Captain, what will we do next? After finishing his cultivation, Sun Wuyu quietly stayed beside Lin Yi, continued to hunt the beasts, and look for the senior students. Licking his lips, Lin Yi couldn't help but say, "Those senior students are too rich. A team of 20 can get 60,000 points. If we rob all of them, how many points will we get? Especially those 20 inner sect disciples. They will definitely have a lot of points. All right, leave the scouting to me." The corner of Sun Wuyu's mouth curled up. Excited, he had just broken through. After saying that, he dashed out. "Hey, I'm not done yet." Chapter 424. Time flowed like water, passing by bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days had passed. 1/3 of the 15 days of training had passed. In these 6 days, Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Silent Soul searched for traces of the older students. On the first day, they caught 3 groups of people, a total of 25 people. All of them were suppressed by Sun Wuyu and obediently handed over their points. A total of 70,000 points, another huge sum of money. However, from the second day onwards, Lin Ye's group could no longer find any traces of the older students. In the beginning, Lin Yi thought it was just bad luck, but after 2 days of not being able to find them, Lin Yi finally understood that the older students had a method of communication and had already spread the news of their existence. Moreover, they had started to be wary of them. This made Lin Yi extremely depressed. Looking at so many points, but unable to make a move, this was the most painful thing in the world. One had to admit that Lin Ye's guess was right. The older students had their own means of communication, and after 3 groups were robbed by Lin Yi, they had spread the news. In a short time, all the older students knew about the existence of Lin Ye's group of 3, and they naturally avoided their areas. Of course, among the older students, there were many who were disdainful of Lin Ye's group, but their top priority was to snatch more points. Since Lin Ye's group of 3 was a tough bone, they would leave them for last. Therefore, the older students increased their speed of robbing the other freshmen, afraid that they would run into Lin Yi. In this way, in less than 3 days, the majority of the freshmen were robbed clean and their hard-earned points were snatched away. As time passed, the areas of the freshmen gradually overlapped, and the freshmen gathered together. Especially the freshmen who had not been robbed. In order to resist the older students, they started to group up. With this cooperation, the speed of the older students' robbing slowed down. Even though they had the advantage in numbers, as more and more monstrous geniuses accumulated enough points to exchange for breaking tribulation pills, they would break through to the true Saint Realm one after another. Hence, robbing several dozen true saints and 1 to 209 tribulation half-true saints was an extremely difficult task. However, the new students formed groups, and so did the older students. As a result, the battles between the new and older students became more and more intense. Other than hunting demonic beasts, the battles between humans were even more intense. After sweeping through the surrounding areas, Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Hu Hao finally arrived at the core region of the divine spiritual mountains on the 8th day. As soon as he arrived at the core area, Sun Wuyu was surprised to find that the surrounding auras had suddenly increased. "Captain, there seems to be a lot of people here, but most of them are freshmen." Sensing carefully, Sun Wuyu sensed that most of the saints' auras were rather weak, and immediately confirmed their identities. Most of them had used the tribulation-breaking pill to break through to the saint realm, so their cultivation was naturally not as stable as cultivating. They're all freshmen. It's meaningless to snatch their points. With a sigh, Linyi could not help but feel puzzled. Even if those older students were consciously avoiding them, how could they not encounter them after so long? Rumble! All of a sudden, a muffled sound rang out. Linyi, Sun Wuyu, and Silent Soul were startled as they turned their heads to look, only to see the space in the distance fluctuating as an intense battle erupted. There's a battle. Let's hurry over and see if there are any older students. Linya's eyes lit up as he quickly leapt up and rushed towards the location of the battle. Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul hurriedly followed. Not even a li after they had rushed up, a figure rushed towards Linyi and the other two at an extremely fast speed. The figure was extremely fast, and Linyi and the other two could only vaguely see that the person's body was covered in bloodstains, looking extremely terrifying. Pong! Suddenly, when the figure crossed paths with Linyi and the other two, the person's body trembled violently as he lost his balance and crashed into Linyi. Holy aura erupted as his will surged like the sea, instantly slapping the figure away. Pooh! The moment the figure landed on the ground, he violently spat out a mouthful of blood as he opened his eyes and looked around. However, when he realized that there was no one around, he could not help but despair as he let out a shrill scream. Noticing this, Linyi frowned slightly as he turned around and appeared in front of the figure in an instant. Seeing a figure appear out of nowhere, the person was startled. When he saw Lin Ye's face clearly, he was instantly shocked as he stretched out his hand and looked at Lin Yi in shock. You're that Lin Yi who defeated Zhang Ruoxu with a fifth tribulation half-true saint cultivation? Amidst the shock, the person directly reached out and grabbed Lin Ye's arm as he shouted anxiously, "Brother, can you do me a favor?" Frowning slightly, Lin Yi calmly shook off the person's hand and asked indifferently, "What happened?" As soon as his voice fell, Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul both came to Lin Ye's side at the same time and sized up the person. "Brother." The person was anxious and did not think much about it as he hurriedly asked for help. "We're new students, and we've been surrounded by 3 groups of senior students in a dense forest. Can you make a trip to our headquarters and call for some reinforcements?" "Oh, where?" Hearing this, Lin Ye's eyes suddenly lit up. After searching for so long, he finally found the senior students with great difficulty. It was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it by chance. "Our main camp is 20 miles to the south. Brother, please hurry up. If you can get Muyi's help, we'll be saved." When speaking of Muyi, a trace of envy and respect flashed across the person's eyes. "I'm asking you, where are you surrounded?" Linny interrupted the person's words and shouted in a deep voice, "Tell me quickly." "You." Hearing this, the person was slightly dazed and asked doubtfully, "What do you want to do?" "I asked you to help. Why are you asking about where we're surrounded?" "Nonsense. Of course it's to save people," Lin Yi said snappily. "A round trip would take at least an incense stick's worth of time. With so much time, I'm afraid their points would have been snatched away long ago. Moreover, what's the use of calling others? What if that group of senior students is planning to attack the reinforcements? What are you going to do? Attack the reinforcements?" Suddenly hearing Lin Ye's words, the person's brain was not enough to process and was stunned on the spot. "Oh, according to what you said just now, there should be around 30 saints in their 3 groups. How could they let you run out alone?" Lin Yi said indifferently. "In my opinion, they deliberately let you out so that you can call for reinforcements. Then they'll ambush the only way to save people. Or they've prepared a formation and are waiting for us to walk right into their trap." Chapter 425. It can't be. Hearing this, the corner of that person's mouth twitched. He raised his head and looked at Lin Yi with an expression full of disbelief. "Take me to the place where you are trapped. I'll go save them," Lin Yi said indifferently. "You?" The man frowned and looked at Lin Yi carefully. He said with a wry smile, "Brother, If it's really like what you said, what's the use of you going there? Your strength is stronger than Mui's? Oh, Lin Yi said indifferently. Just take me there, instead of wasting time running far away to call for help. You might fall into a trap. You might as well take me there first. Even if there is a trap, when the time comes, that group of people will definitely let you go in order to catch more people. At that time, it won't be too late for you to go back and get reinforcements. Anyway, it's too late. I guess that group of freshmen's points have already been snatched away. Hearing this, the man could not help but hesitate. After a moment of hesitation, the man gritted his teeth and said, "Well, I'll take you there, but if there is danger, I won't protect you. When the time comes, you can just run away." Lin Yi looked indifferent and did not take the man's words to heart. His divine will had already reached the sage level. Coupled with Sun Wuyu, as long as they did not encounter a saint-level late-stage genius, they did not have to worry about anything. Okay. Seeing Lin Yi so calm, the man's flustered heart calmed down. After resting for a moment, the man stood up and led Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and the other two in the direction they had just come from. The injured man was quite slow. In addition, he was a little worried that he would really encounter obstacles and traps, so he looked around cautiously. After walking for half an hour, when they were about to reach the dense forest, the man saw that there was no danger and breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Yi and Sun Wuyu, who were behind him, showed a strange look. Lin Yi, our brothers are trapped in this forest. After hesitating for a moment, the man didn't step into the forest. He turned to Lin Yi and said, "If you want to save her, then hurry up and go in. I'll go back and call Mui and the others over. You want to leave at this time? Don't you realize that something is wrong?" Hearing this, Lin Yi looked at that person with an extremely strange expression. Something is wrong? The man frowned in surprise and quickly raised his head. Buzz! Almost at the same time that person raised his head, Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, Solitary Spirit, and that person's surroundings instantly exploded with a circle of light purple and black light. Buzz, buzz, buzz! A bizarre undulation erupted like Mount Tai, pressing down on Lin Ye's group of four. "You're courting death." Sun Wuyu's right foot stomped on the ground, and in an instant, the earth trembled. A shock wave suddenly burst out, mixed with a sharp sword essence, instantly cutting off all the bizarre undulations. For a moment, there was only a circle of purple-black light left around Lin Ye's group of four. Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi was quite surprised. This array didn't disperse. It seems that the person who attacked is not weak. With Sun Wuyu's current strength, coupled with the sharpness of his sword essence, even if a person of the middle stage of the Saint Realm used an array, it would be difficult to resist. Drip! Drip! The flickering light was weak, and accompanied by the sound of water dripping, some special liquid dripped directly toward Lin Ye's group of four. "Still want to use poison?" Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi sneered, raised his hand, and blasted out a Celestial Emperor Fist. Celestial Emperor Fist, level 7. Rumble. The strong wind from the fist rotated, erupting with an extremely strong force, and suddenly bombarded that ray of light into pieces. Amidst the crisp sound of glass shattering, that ray of light turned into nothingness and disappeared in the air. Pooh! Bang! 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 Almost at the same time that the array shattered, four figures flew out from thin air and landed on the ground. Raising their heads, they looked at Lin Yi with eyes full of shock. This guy, how is this possible? He's just a fifth tribulation, half-true saint. How could he break our array? Could it be that the person who broke it was a mid-stage saint? Terrifying. That formation can't be broken by people of the same level. How did they do it? The four figures were shocked, and they didn't dare to believe what they had seen with their own eyes. However, the unending pain in their bodies reminded them that all of this was happening in reality. Not to mention them, even the person who had led the way was dumbfounded. In the beginning, although he had agreed to Lin Ye's request, he had always felt that Lin Yi was lying to him. What encirclement to attack reinforcements? He had never heard of such a thing. However, He knew that Lin Ye's strength was not bad, and if he could bring Lin Ye here, he might be able to delay for a while, giving him time to ask for help from Muyi. That was why he had agreed to Lin Ye's request. Who would have thought that Lin Ye was right? There was actually someone lying in ambush and attacking them. Although he didn't feel that the array was terrifying, the moment he saw the 4 mid-stage Saint experts lying on the ground, his body trembled. Looking at Lin Ye, his eyes were filled with respect. No matter what realm Lin Ye was in, being able to injure 4 mid-stage Saint experts with a single punch was definitely enough to make him worship him. Of course, Lin Ye's Heavenly Emperor Fist was unable to injure the 4 mid-stage Saint experts, and it was mainly because of Sun Wuyu's shocking sword intent. Just 4 people, and you dare to ambush us, you're really bold. Lin Ye wasn't worried about the thoughts of the 4 people and the person who led them here. Instead, he looked at them coldly and said indifferently, "Hand over your points. Otherwise, I'll cripple you." After a few days of research, Lin Ye had already understood that Theta Scarbii was very lax about the rules. As long as they didn't kill anyone, they could do anything else, even if they were crippled. Hearing this, the 4 people immediately sucked in a breath of cold air, and their eyelids kept twitching. They were extremely shocked. No one was willing to be crippled. In an instant, the 4 people were extremely depressed. Originally, they thought that being able to lie in ambush here was a good job, and they could get more points. But they never thought that the first person they ambushed would be the one to kill them. Rolling their eyes, the 4 people suddenly thought of Lin Ye, who someone in the senior circle had talked about a few days ago. Their expressions changed drastically, and they blurted out, "You're Lin Ye?" "Oh, Not only was Lin Ye surprised, but the person who led them here was even more stunned and muttered, "How do you know Lin Ye's name?" Lin Ye said indifferently, "Since you know who I am, why don't you hand over your points quickly? Otherwise, it won't be as simple as handing over your points." Chapter 426. No one was willing to throw away their lives. Therefore, after the 4 of them knew that their opponent was Lin Ye, they did not hesitate at all and very straightforwardly handed over their points. This scene caused the person who was leading the way to be dumbfounded. He was stunned on the spot and did not dare to believe his own eyes. It had to be said that after robbing most of the freshmen, the older students were very rich. The 4 seniors each had about 20,000 points, which added up to almost 90,000 points. Adding the points that Lin Ye obtained earlier, he had 170,000 points. Gulp. The person leading the way couldn't help but gulp when he saw how many points Lin Ye had in his hands. Rolling his eyes, the guide suddenly said, "Brother Lin Ye, they took 3,000 points from me earlier. Can you get it to me?" Hearing this, Lin Ye frowned and asked, "Who took your points?" "Those seniors." That person gnashed his teeth and glared fiercely at the 4 seniors. He wished he could eat them alive. "Oh," Lin Ye said indifferently, "since they took your points, why are you asking me for them?" The guide's mouth twitched. He looked at Lin Ye with eyes full of anger. If he did not know that he was no match for Lin Ye, he would have snatched the points already. "That's enough," Lin Ye said indifferently. "Don't you want to go back and get more people? Hurry up." With that, Lin Ye did not care about the guide, nor did he care about the 4 injured seniors. He immediately led Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul into the depths of the forest. When he arrived, he spread out his divine telekinesis and sensed the place where the intense battle was taking place. Soon, Lin Ye and the other 2 disappeared from the guide's sight. F***CK. The guide's face was ferocious. He could not help but curse. "Bastard, what are you so arrogant for? Didn't you just defeat 4 trash? So arrogant? When Big Brother Muyi arrives, I would like to see if you can still be so arrogant." Hearing this, the 4 older students sneered as they looked at the guide. They could sense that this fellow was extremely weak. If they were not injured, they could easily suppress him. Bastard. However, when the guide noticed the sneers of the 4 seniors, he immediately flew into a rage and gnashed his teeth. "What are you laughing at? Mother of ***, how dare you laugh at me, Lu Yuan? Do you believe that I won't kill all of you?" Clenching his fists tightly, Lu Yuan glared at the four seniors like a wild beast. Ha ha ha. However, when they saw Lu Yuan's appearance, the four seniors could not help but laugh out loud. F***CK. Hearing the laughter, Lu Yuan was like a volcano that was about to erupt. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart and exploded. Bastard, I'll let you laugh at me. With a furious roar, Lu Yuan quickly stepped forward and punched and kicked the four people. At this time, the four seniors were suffering from the backlash of the array and did not have the ability to retaliate. They could only let Lu Yuan beat them up. In just a short while, the four seniors' faces were covered in bruises. But the way they looked at Lu Yuan was full of disdain. 10,000 runes, Saint Artifact. Giant black sword. A piercing shout sounded, and a giant black sword floated in the air and slashed out. In an instant, sharp sword chi wreaked havoc, and everyone in the square exclaimed in surprise. Wings of Radiance. A milky white radiance flickered, and two pairs of giant wings appeared in the air. A holy aura shone in the surroundings. In the dense sea of trees, several hundred people fought fiercely. Those Ninth Tribulation half-true saints who were slightly weaker formed a group as they tried their best to hold back the early Saint Realm experts. As for the Saint Realm experts, they fought with real swords and spears. In an instant, the square was filled with Saint Aura, and it was extremely terrifying. Even mid-stage Saint Realm experts were unable to break through the void. In addition to the terrifying Saint Aura, there was an endless stream of attacks. All kinds of 1,000 runes Saint Artifacts and 10,000 runes Saint Artifacts exploded, and fierce attacks spread out in all directions. Ha ha! Suddenly, a loud laughter sounded, and blazing flames and soft water vapor appeared at the same time. The cold and hot aura converged in the air. When everyone felt the opposite aura, their bodies trembled, and they hurriedly looked up. They saw a figure like a god with two pairs of milky white wings behind his back. He held a flaming whip in one hand and a sword made of water vapor in the other. He was awe-inspiring. Hiss! This aura seems to be about to break through to the late-stage Saint Realm. Sensing this point, many of the new students became alarmed. Although most of them had broken through to the Saint Realm, and with their monstrous talent, they could fight against mid-stage Saint Realm experts. However, if they were to cross 2 stages in a row, they were not confident at all. However, at this moment, they could only fight with their lives on the line. Otherwise, they would have to hand over all the points they had painstakingly accumulated. Shunling Xiao, Zhang Tianheng. Suddenly, a figure strode out with a thin sword in his hand and shouted coldly, Han Tianliang, Duanmu Lei, although you are enemies, we must be united now. Let's attack together and resist this attack. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone behind him fell silent. Although they had joined forces, each of them had their own grievances and could not cooperate well. Now, that was a matter of life and death. They could not care less. Yin Shihao raised the thin sword in his hand and shouted loudly, "Fight! As long as we can hold on until Mui arrives, these people will not be able to do anything to us." Lu Yuan has already gone back to get reinforcements. We must hold on. Fight! As soon as they heard that someone had gone back to get reinforcements, everyone's confidence rose again. Zhang Tianheng, when we go back, let's compete again. This time, we must be united. Ha ha! Shunling Xiao, you are thinking for the greater good. How can I be selfish? Similar scenes kept appearing among the crowd. In the face of strong pressure, everyone smiled and put aside their grievances. They worked together to deal with the older students. Noticing this, the older students couldn't help but frown. They were few in number to begin with. With less than 40 people, it was not easy to surround hundreds of people here. It would be difficult to defeat them so quickly. After all, the difference in numbers was too great. When the number reached a certain level, it could make up for the difference in quality. No, we can't hold back anymore. If their reinforcements arrive, we will have wasted our time. Chen, Baoyu, don't hold back anymore. Everyone, let's join forces and suppress these new students. Shen Tianxiong shouted and waved his hands. In an instant, a blazing flame whip like a dragon lashed at Yin Shihao, Shun Lingxiao, Zhang Tianheng, and the others. Whoosh! A stream of water filled with cold air suddenly appeared and sprayed at the new students. Chapter 4:27. Shun Tianxiong attacked with all his might. The rest of them did not dare to hold back and unleash their strongest attacks. Boom! 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 For a time, tens of thousands of different domains appeared, and a strong saint aura filled the entire space. The battle between the freshmen and the seniors was in full swing and extremely fierce. At this time, the freshmen could not lose for the sake of points. The seniors could not lose for the sake of their reputation. Otherwise, how could they survive if word got out? They were all geniuses, but they could not even compete with the freshmen. If that was the case, they might as well find a piece of frozen tofu and kill themselves. Shen Lingxiao, Zhang Tianheng, and the others put down all their grievances and went all out to resist the seniors. Under the strong saint aura, from time to time, there were freshmen who were sent flying, revealing a gap. However, before the older students could rush up and tear open the gap, several new students flew up and blocked the gap. It had to be said that this time, the freshman team was united. However, the seniors' advantage was too great. They were all geniuses, and the seniors have been cultivating in Cebu Gakuen for more than a year. If they could not defeat Shen Lingxiao, Zhang Tianheng, and Yin Shihao, it would be a waste of time. Therefore, after forcibly holding on for half an hour, the freshmen could no longer hold on. Including Shen Lingxiao, Yin Shihao, and the others, they were seriously injured and fell to the ground, spitting out large mouthfuls of blood. Mother **, these guys are really tough. Shen Tianxiong snorted and waved his hand. He led the crowd to surround Yin Shihao and the other freshmen. It had to be said that the gap between the seniors and the freshmen was real. Shen Tianxiong and the others only had a dozen injuries, and they were only minor injuries. The others were intact. On the other hand, Yin Shihao, Shun Lingxiao, Zhang Tianheng, and the others were all injured. The lightest injury was a fracture, and they could no longer effectively defend themselves. Sighing in their hearts, Yin Shihao and the other freshmen were in despair. They could only pin their hopes on Mui and the others. Hand over all your points. Otherwise, I will destroy you. Shen Tianxiong sneered and said, Behave yourselves. With a wave of his hand, Shen Tianxiong's subordinates began to collect the points of the freshmen. At this moment, half of the 15 days of the trial had already passed. Even the freshmen had obtained a lot of points by hunting spirit beasts. Almost everyone had more than 2,000 points, and 80% of them had between 1,600 to 2,000 points. The freshmen didn't dare to resist. In just a short moment, all the points were in the hands of the seniors. After obtaining more than 200,000 points, the seniors were in a very good mood. They didn't even bother to clean up the freshmen. They waved their hands, indicating for Yin Shihao and the others to leave quickly. However, before those seniors could pack up their points and leave, a mocking laugh suddenly sounded out. Who is it? Shen Tianxiong, Chunin, and the others' faces changed when they heard the mocking voice. They quickly looked around and sized up their surroundings. Looking around, Shen Tianxiong and the others suddenly realized that there were 3 figures standing on the trunk of a tree not far away. Those 3 figures were Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Silent Soul. Sensing this, Shen Tianxiong couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Even with his strength, he didn't notice when Lin Yi and the other 2 had arrived. This made him tremble in fear. Who is it? His eyes swiveling, Shen Tianxiong lightly said, Are you also a disciple participating in the Cebu Gakuen trial? Although the divine spiritual mountain range belonged to Cebu Gakuen, there were many treasures in the depths of the mountain range. Peak experts would often come in and out. Therefore, Shen Tianxiong was a little uncertain about the identities of Lin Yi and the other 2. Although he couldn't see through Lin Yi's strength, he could see Sun Wuyu's realm and aura. Furthermore, Sun Wuyu was the same as him, comprehending the Sword Dao domain. Sun Wuyu's comprehension was also at a higher level. When they met, Shun Tianxiong's heart jumped. "Congratulations, you guessed right," Lin Yi said with an indifferent smile. "Unfortunately, there's no prize." As his voice fell, Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Silent Soul leapt up and landed on the ground, indifferently walking towards Shun Tianxiong's group. Seeing this scene, Shun Tianxiong's eyelids couldn't help twitching. Panic rose in his heart, as if something big was about to happen. Noticing this, the depressed Yin Shihao, Shun Lingxiao, Zhang Tianhang, and the rest raised their heads in surprise. Following the shocked gazes of Shun Tianxiong's group, they saw Lin Yi and the other two. Lin Yi, how could it be that kid? Suddenly seeing Lin Yi, the new disciples from St. Martial Heavenly City, as well as Shun Lingxiao, Zhang Tianhang, and the rest, were all astonished, revealing shocked expressions. That kid, did he walk right into the trap? Frowning slightly, Shun Lingxiao stared fixedly at Lin Yi. He didn't know why, but he had a premonition that Lin Yi would definitely not fail. Of course, Shun Lingxiao wouldn't show it, and he silently looked at Lin Yi. It's Lin Yi. He defeated the ninth tribulation, half-true Saint Zhang Ruoxu in a domineering manner. His strength is not bad. Hey, so what if he defeated a ninth tribulation, half-true saint? Our opponents now are all saints. The rest who knew Lin Yi and the other two were also discussing. In their hearts, they didn't trust Lin Yi, but they were happy that Lin Yi and the other two's points would be snatched away. In this way, they would be equally miserable. It had to be said that their thoughts were terrifying. Not only did they not want to take back what they had lost, they actually hoped that others' points would be snatched away as well. Shun Tianxiong's ears twitched slightly, and after hearing everyone's discussion about Lin Yi, his expression changed slightly. He carefully sized up Lin Yi again, and when he realized that Lin Ye's true cultivation was only at the fifth tribulation half-true saint realm, he heaved a sigh of relief, and all the pressure in his heart dissipated. Ha ha ha! Shun Tianxiong laughed loudly, and he didn't put Lin Yi in his heart at all. He said coldly, "Originally, I had to set up a trap to lure the new disciples. Since you want to take the lead and hand over your points to me, I won't be polite." What a coincidence! Lin Yi smiled indifferently and said, "I won't be polite either. Buzz." As soon as Sun Wuyu finished speaking, a sword intent soared to the sky. The power in his body erupted, and he stared at Shun Tianxiong and the others with a ferocious gaze. "If you want to live, then hand over all your points to me." Sun Wuyu's ferocious gaze was fixed on everyone, and the aura in his body was so strong that it was hard for everyone to breathe. In an instant, whether it was Shun Tianxiong, Chunin, Yin Shihao, or Shun Lingxiao, all of them were stunned, and they revealed a look of horror as they stared blankly at Sun Wuyu. Chapter 428. After a short moment of silence, Shun Tianxiong, Chunin, and the others looked at each other and burst into laughter. Their eyes were filled with disdain as they looked at Sun Wuyu, Lin Yi, and Silent Soul. A mere mid-stage saint and two half-true saint ants dares to boast shamelessly and even ask us to hand over our points. I really don't understand where you get your confidence from. That's right. Ha ha. You're just a mid-stage saint, and your cultivation is about the same as mine. How dare you be so arrogant? As Shun Tianxiong and the others laughed, the other senior students also laughed and mocked. I think this guy is too used to acting like a tyrant in a small place. He hasn't adjusted his mentality after coming here. Which one of those who can pass the Cebu Gakuin's test isn't a genius? How can he be so arrogant when his cultivation is the same as ours? He's simply courting death. Since he's so arrogant, let's teach him a good lesson. We'll let him understand that there's always someone better than him out there. Amidst the arrogant laughter, many senior students stepped forward and rubbed their fists as they looked coldly at Sun Wuyu's group. Shun Tianxiong and the others sneered. "Good brat, I was thinking of leaving. I didn't expect the three of you to suddenly jump out. Since that's the case, The three of you should hand over your points as well. Lin Yi, who had been silent all this while, took a step forward and said indifferently, "If you want my points, then we'll have to see if you have the ability." And Shen Tianxiong and the others raised their eyebrows and looked at Lin Yi in confusion. Looking at Sun Wuyu again, Shen Tianxiong said coldly, "Interesting, a fifth tribulation half-true saint dares to speak before a saint. You have no right to speak in front of us. 'Tis TSK." Some of the senior students mocked. This brat is only a fifth tribulation half-true saint, but he can come here. Could it be that he sold his ass and relied on that mid-stage saint to pass the test? Oh my, that little girl's cultivation is even lower. TSK, TSK. Did that brat bring her in to warm his bed? Ha ha ha. At this point, many of the seniors started laughing as they looked at Silent Soul with wretchedness. In an instant, Silent Soul's face turned pale. His eyes were like cold blades as he stared at everyone. Clenching his fists tightly, the aura within his body surged. If it wasn't for the fact that Silent Soul knew he wasn't strong enough, he would have charged forward. He deserves to die. Lin Yi and Sun Wuyu's faces were gloomy, and the anger in their hearts erupted. Silent Soul was their friend, and now that he was insulted, it was hard for him to hold back his anger. Originally, I only wanted to take your points. But now, it seems that I have to teach you how to respect others. Taking a step forward, Lin Ye's voice was low and hoarse, as if it came from the depths of hell. It echoed in everyone's ears, causing fear to rise in their hearts. Even Shen Tianxiong and the others felt a chill run down their spines. They couldn't help but frown. Looking at this scene, Shun Lingxiao and Zhang Tianheng smiled bitterly. Originally, they thought that they were stronger than Lin Yi, but now it seemed that Lin Ye's aura was stronger than theirs. This surprised them. Why was Lin Ye's aura not weaker than theirs when he was only a fifth tribulation half-true saint, and he even had holy might? Maybe he can really bring us hope. Feeling the biting cold aura from Lin Ye's body, Shun Lingxiao and Zhang Tianhong's hearts skipped a beat, and they suddenly saw hope. Interesting. Shrugging his shoulders, flames surged behind Shun Tianxiong, dispelling the cold air. Looking at Lin Yi, his expression gradually became serious, and he said indifferently, "A mere fifth tribulation half-true saint can do this. It seems like you are really talented. But I've seen a lot of talented people like you." Raising his right hand, a fireball suddenly condensed. The flames were enchanting, and its shape was constantly changing. Shun Tianxiong continued, "But all of them have been defeated by me. No matter how talented you are, if you want to go against me before you break through to the mid-level saint realm, you're simply courting death." Shun Tianxiong's face darkened. He clenched his right fist, and the flames in his hand suddenly splashed out, turning into fiery red spots of light that filled the sky. Like a rain of arrows, they whistled out and shot toward Lin Yi. Annihilation. Sword light. Sun Wuyu raised his hand, and in an instant, a piercingly cold, saintly might suppressed the entire space. Rumble. Biting cold sword intent suddenly bloomed from the void, colliding with the flames in the sky. Pucci. In almost an instant, the flames in the sky were torn apart by the sword intent, and the biting cold sword intense attack did not diminish as it whistled towards Shun Tianxiong and the others. And sensing this, Shun Tianxiong and the others couldn't help but look at Sun Wuyu with astonishment. Although Sun Wuyu's realm was similar to theirs, they rarely had opponents in the same realm in Cebu Gakuen, so they didn't take Sun Wuyu seriously. However, this time, Sun Wuyu raised his hand and shattered his flames, which surprised them quite a bit. Interesting, no wonder you dare to stand out. Turns out you have some ability. The corners of his mouth curled up, and Shun Tianxiong snorted coldly. He clasped his hands together, and blazing flames surged behind him. More than 50,000 flame domains erupted with scorching heat, roasting and burning the space. Crimson flame light. Roaring flame sword. With a low shout, a crimson armor appeared and covered Shun Tianxiong's body. It was a long sword, and the blade was full of flames just like blood. After sensing Sun Wuyu's strength, Shen Tianxiong also became serious. It had to be said that Shen Tianxiong's strength was not weak. When he went all out, his aura was astonishing, and he was much stronger than Peng Lin and the others that Lin Yi and the others had encountered previously. Even Sun Wuyu did not dare to be careless. His expression turned serious, and he also summoned his sword domain. In an instant, a total of 90,000 sword domains appeared. The dense and sharp sword qi covered the sky and covered the earth, shrouding everyone in it. Hiss, oh my god, more than 90,000 sword domains. It's too terrifying. Even peak saints and invincible saints. It's difficult to break through the shackles of the domain. He's only a middle stage saint, but he's already at the threshold of breaking through the shackles of the domain. Feeling more than 90,000 sword domains, everyone, including the seniors and the freshmen, such as Shun Lingxiao, Zhang Tianheng, and Yin Shihao, were all stunned. Among them, the strongest person had only comprehended more than 50,000 domains. It was a world of difference from 90,000 domains. For a moment, Shen Tianxiong swallowed a mouthful of saliva and involuntarily took a few steps back. When two people were of the same level, the difference in domains was enough to distinguish them. The difference of more than 40,000 domains made Shen Tianxiong fearful, and he did not dare to fight with Sun Wuyu again. He raised his right hand, and the sword qi in the sky whistled and lined up in the air. The sharp blades were pointed at Shen Tianxiong, Chunin, and the others, causing their skin to hurt. Chapter 429, Part 1 Swoosh. Without any hesitation, Sun Wuyu suddenly swung his right hand. In an instant, the sword qi circling behind Sun Wuyu fell like a rain of arrows, shooting towards Shen Tianxiong. Feeling the sharp sword qi, Shen Tianxiong's expression changed. Without hesitation, he slashed with his sword. Roaring flame sword. The scorching sword aura pierced through the sword and collided with the sword aura that filled the sky. Buzz. Clang. Sword qi and sword qi collided. It was like a needle against an awl, and the most intense collision erupted. However, the sword qi of the roaring flame sword was condensed from all the strength. Sun Wuyu was different. He dispersed all the strength in his body. Each sword qi only contained a little strength. Bang! Amidst the crisp sounds, many sword qis were shattered. Crimson sword qis, mixed with scorching flames, surged up violently and went against the flow of sword qis that filled the sky. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, one sword qi after another was torn apart and turned into nothingness. However, after being pierced by the sword qi, the power contained in the crimson sword qi was gradually depleted. A moment later, several more sword qis came crashing over, and the crimson sword qis were shattered. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The remaining sword qi did not slow down and shot towards Shen Tianxiong again. Compared to the 90,000 sword domain, the sword qi that was torn apart by the crimson sword qi was like a drop in the ocean. In addition, Sun Wuyu was about to touch the shackles of the sword territory. He had a deeper understanding of the territory. Every sword qi that was consumed would quickly recover. Therefore, Shen Tianxiong wanted to compete with Sun Wuyu in this aspect. He was simply tired of living. Annihilation. Sword radiance. Narrowing his eyes, Sun Wuyu raised his right hand, and the sword qi that filled the sky suddenly disappeared. The space trembled, and a silver-white light sword that was completely condensed from thousands and tens of thousands of sword qi quietly appeared in the void and slowly rotated. The sharp blade was pointed at Shen Tianxiong. Buzz. The sword qi was shocking. It was invisible but sharp. Shen Tianxiong felt as if his skin was being pierced by tens of thousands of sharp needles, and the pain was unbearable. Shen Tianxiong's face turned cold as he shouted. He raised his raging flame sword and used it to sweep away thousands of soldiers, cutting off that sharp sword qi. At the same time, the fiery red armor on his body burst into flames. The scorching heat distorted the space around him. However, even so, the sharp sword chi still firmly stuck to Shun Tianxiong, making him feel incomparably uncomfortable. He didn't dare to move at all. He was sure that so long as he attacked, the sword chi would tear him into pieces. Attack! Suddenly, Chunin and Baoyu attacked at the same time. The sharp metal domain and the biting cold ice domain silently appeared and blocked the sword chi one after another. Buzz! Explode! Following Sun Wuyu's shout, the annihilation sword light suddenly exploded, and the sword chi contained within it suddenly swept out and spread out. Bang, bang, bang! In an instant, countless sword chi collided with the ice wall and the golden light. Chun and Baoyu immediately felt pain in their bodies. They couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood and quickly retreated. However, they didn't dare to withdraw their domains. They could clearly sense that if the domain was withdrawn, the sharp sword aura would instantly tear all of them to shreds. As such, they could only endure and allow the sword chi to collide with their domains. Interesting. Since all of you want to attack together, I'll grant your wish. Sun Wuyu roared and pressed his palms forward. The surging saint's aura immediately suppressed the entire space. Then, Sun Wuyu rushed forward and suddenly grabbed Shun Tianxiong, Chunin, and Baoyu and flew into the sky with them. Boss! Leader! Seeing this scene, the rest of the people were shocked. They looked up and saw that Sun Wuyu alone was suppressing Shun Tianxiong and the other two amidst the powerful saint's aura. Shun Tianxiong and the other two were like small boats in a storm that could be destroyed at any time. In an instant, the rest of the seniors were terrified. Shun Tianxiong and the other two were the strongest in their group. If they were defeated, Sun Wuyu alone could suppress all of them. Damn, what do we do? It seems like the leader and the others aren't his match. Who would have thought that he would be so strong? Everyone was terrified. They looked up at the intense battle waves and wished they could attack together. However, they also understood that if even Shun Tianxiong wasn't his match, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. Wait, that guy's up there now. Doesn't that mean... Suddenly, the senior's eyes flashed and turned to Lin Yi and Silent Soul. Soon, dozens of people turned their gazes to Lin Yi and Silent Soul. Their eyes were filled with coldness. In their eyes, Lin Yi and Silent Soul were only half-sages. To them, they were as weak as ants. Lin Yi and Silent Soul were with Sun Wuyu. If they could catch Lin Yi and Silent Soul, perhaps Sun Wuyu wouldn't dare to make a move. Oh no! Shun Lingxiao, Yin Shihao, and the others were also shocked. They quickly shouted, Lin Yi, come over quickly. We'll protect you together. As long as that guy defeats Shun Tianxiong and the other bastards, we can turn the tables. As they spoke, Shun Lingxiao and the others struggled to get up. They used all their strength and stimulated their potential. It had to be said that they weren't weak. They shocked the seniors and made them freeze in place. Shun Lingxiao and the others didn't want to protect Lin Yi. They wanted to see Sun Wuyu defeat Shun Tianxiong and the others. At that time, they might even be able to get back the points they lost. That was hundreds of thousands of points that could be exchanged for many treasures. They naturally couldn't bear to see their points disappear completely. However, Lin Yi didn't react to their help at all. Sensing the seniors' intentions, Lin Ye's face became colder and colder. He slowly walked towards them. Want to use me to threaten others? Come, let's see if you can hurt me. As soon as his voice fell, the supreme holy armor appeared on Lin Ye's body. Blazing flames released a biting cold sword intent. Intense holy aura fell from the sky. It wasn't any weaker than Sun Wuyu's. In an instant, the seniors were stunned. Their mouths were agape, as they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Gulp! Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, the few in front couldn't help but take a few steps back. They muttered, this guy, although he's only a fifth tribulation half-true saint, his aura is similar to that person. With our strength, can we deal with him? Chapter 430. Many seniors were in a trance and did not even dare to look at Lin Yi. They began to doubt if they could defeat Lin Yi and bind Sun Wuyu. Damn it, let's fight. Suddenly, someone came to his senses and shouted, "Brothers, don't be scared by him. If we don't catch him, we'll all be finished when the three captains are defeated." That's right. Hearing the sudden shout, everyone came to their senses and glared at Lin Yi. Buzz! Buzz! Holy aura gradually surged and various realms appeared behind everyone, quietly surrounding Lin Yi. Hee, there are only two outcomes for you today. One, very miserable. Two, kneel down and beg for mercy. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi fully activated 2/3 of the divine sword constitution. His body continued to sublimate and the sword realm appeared, turning into rays of light that surrounded Lin Yi. Buzz! Buzz! As Lin Yi slowly raised his hands, unparalleled sword radiance surged and shook the entire world. Crack! 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 Crisp sounds kept ringing. The long swords in the hands of all the older students and new students present began to tremble violently. My sword! What's going on? Why is my sword moving? Everyone was shocked and quickly tried to cover their swords. However, Lin Yi shouted, "Celestial sword divine constitution. All the sword in the heavens are mine to use." In the next moment, the long swords in everyone's hands broke free and flew toward Lin Yi. It was as if Lin Yi and the sword realm behind Lin Yi were their masters. Swoosh! 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 In less than 10 breaths, more than 100 long swords had formed in the void. Those long swords had all merged with the sword realm. Although there were only a few long swords, each long sword was at least 1,000 inscriptions sacred weapon and contained great power. With the influx of power, Lin Yi's domain of swords was extremely powerful this time. Heavens, this seems to be a domain that has broken through the shackles. How is this possible? This fellow is merely a fifth tribulation half-true saint. How can he break through the shackles of the domain? Furthermore, it's the most difficult sword domain. At this time, the onlookers finally noticed the difference in Lin Yi's domain. For others, a domain was just a support that could increase one's aura and power. Their true offensive methods were still saint artifacts, cultivation techniques, and martial techniques. However, Lin Yi's domain had powerful offensive capabilities. In an instant, everyone was in complete despair. It was one thing for their sacred weapon to be snatched away, but it had actually become someone else's weapon to attack them. This made them despair. At the same time, Lin Yi released his divine thought. An invisible holy aura slowly descended, lingering around the seniors before they noticed it. After doing all this, Lin Yi felt a lot more at ease. With his holy aura, sword domain, and divine sword physique, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with these saints. If this still didn't work, then he could only use the divine Dragon 9 transformations and Invincible Attack. Invincible Attack could only be used once in a certain period of time. If he could keep it, Lin Yi would still keep it. Brothers, fight it out with him. After a long time, many seniors woke up and no longer hesitated. More than 30 people called out their respective domains, took out their saint artifacts, and erupted with their strongest power. Rumble! In an instant, countless attacks fell like raindrops, one after another. The entire space was distorted and deformed by the intense pressure. Young master, you must help me teach them a lesson and teach them a lesson. Not far away, Silent Soul waved his fist and cheered for Lin Yi. However, the corners of the other freshmen's mouths twitched, and they looked at Lin Yi as if they were looking at a fool. As Lin Yi didn't make a move against them, whether it was the sword domain or the power of the will saint, they didn't feel Lin Yi's strength at all. Seeing that Lin Yi, a mere fifth tribulation half-true saint, was so reckless and rushed forward alone under their protection, they were all infuriated. They weren't worried that Lin Yi would be injured, but that Lin Yi would interfere with Sun Wuyu, causing them to be unable to get their points back. Mother of Asterisker, is this bastard crazy? He can clearly wait for his friend to defeat Shun Tianxiong and the others before making a plan. What is he doing? Sigh, it's over. Looks like we won't be able to get those points back. Bah, it's best if this guy is beaten to death. What a waste of opportunity. Many freshmen were infuriated. Even Ling Xiao and the others shook their heads and sighed helplessly. However, they had just sighed when a rapid and sharp whistling sound of sword chi suddenly resounded by their ears. One sword light chills 19 provinces. Slash! With a light shout, the blazing crimson flame flickered with cold light and slashed out horizontally, bringing with it a sharp sword chi. At the same time, the unparalleled sword domain turned into hundreds of light swords, whistling and bombarding the attacks in the sky. Swish, swish, swish. Rumble. The boundless light swords, mixed with the sharp sword chi, suddenly swept past all the attacks. When this sword slashed out, the sky changed color, and the space suddenly stopped. Bang, bang, bang. Countless attacks were first slashed by the sky sword 12 styles, and many of them were instantly shattered. Next, countless domain light swords collided with those attacks, and powerful shockwaves burst out. Space was constantly shattered. The earth cracked, and the surrounding trees withered in an instant as if they had encountered a drought. Boom, boom, boom. One shock wave after another spread out and swept across. Under the attack of the sword domain and the sky sword 12 styles, everything within a radius of 10 miles was turned into ruins. All the trees withered, and their trunks were cut in half. As for those attacks, they vanished without a trace. Many senior students suddenly stiffened in the air, and the light in their eyes gradually faded, leaving only endless fear slowly rising. At this time, they finally understood why Lin Yi was not afraid of them and even attacked. This kind of strength was 10 times or even 100 times more powerful than theirs. Let alone them, Ling Xiao, Yin Shihao, and the others were stunned, revealing a shocked expression, and looked at Lin Yi in shock. Bang, bang, bang. Another 3 crisp sounds rang out. When they looked up, they saw Sun Wuyu, Shen Tianxiong, Chenin, and Bao Yu's figures fly out one after another. Especially Shen Tianxiong and the other 2, who were covered in blood, fell heavily to the ground like kites with broken strings. Chapter 431. His sword domain was terrifying. With just one slash, whether it was Shen Tianxiong, Chenin, Bao Yu, or the other senior disciples, they were all heavily injured and collapsed to the ground. Inside their bodies, sword intent wreaked havoc, destroying their meridians, causing them to suffer unbearable pain. Other than Shen Tianxiong, Chen En, and Bao Yu, the others couldn't even get up from the ground under the intense pain. Even Shen Tianxiong, Chen En, and Bao Yu could barely get up. Shameless boasting. Lin Yi stepped forward slowly, looking at Shen Tianxiong and the others with eyes full of cold, killing intent. At this time, if not for the fact that they were in the middle of a trial, just based on their insults to Silent Spirit, Lin Yi had an impulse to kill them. Sensing Lin Yi's anger, Shen Tianxiong, Chen En, and Bao Yu couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air and staggered back a few steps. In their hearts, they suddenly regretted their actions. If they had known that Lin Yi was so strong, they definitely wouldn't have provoked Lin Yi. But no one would have thought that a mere fifth tribulation half-true Saint Ant could erupt with power that could shock mid-stage Saint Realm geniuses like them. Moreover, Sun Wuyu's strength was also terrifying. Although his cultivation realm was lower than theirs, and his Saint Aura wasn't as strong as theirs, the power he could display in a real fight was incomparably terrifying. This made them despair. F***CK. These two are simply monsters. Sun Wuyu snorted coldly. Count yourselves lucky today. I won't kill you. But if you want to die, then don't blame me for being merciless. As soon as he said those words, more than 90,000 sword domains burst forth. The sword intent that filled the sky was like sharp blades piercing into the skin of the crowd. In an instant, everyone's body trembled, and they felt incomparably terrified. Apologize for what you said just now. Walking in front of Shun Tianxiong and the others, Lin Yi placed his hands behind his back and looked at them coldly, like a god who didn't care about them at all. Shun Tianxiong and the other two exchanged glances. Strange expressions appeared in their eyes. Even though they had been injured by Lin Ye's sword, none of them believed that a mere fifth tribulation half-true saint like Lin Yi could defeat all of them with a single sword. In their opinion, Lin Yi must have used some special saint artifact. Now that they were so close to Lin Yi, perhaps they could catch Lin Yi off guard and take him down in one fell swoop. However, before they could make a move, they began to think of retreating. From what happened just now, they could see that Lin Yi was not stupid. On the contrary, Lin Yi could order Sun Wuyu around. As a mere fifth tribulation half-true saint, he was able to command such a powerful true saint. This proved that Lin Yi's strength was not weak. As a result, they began to hesitate in their hearts. Should they make a move? Just as Shun Tianxiong and the other two were hesitating, a gaze suddenly landed on them. It was like a cold blade that pierced their necks, causing their faces to turn ugly. Are you guys thinking of making a move on me? The corners of Lin Ye's mouth curled up slightly, and he said indifferently, "If you have such thoughts, go ahead and make a move. However, after you make a move, I'm very curious about your ending." Shin Tianxiong and the other two felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Chills ran down their spines, and they couldn't help swallowing mouthfuls of saliva. As for the thought of dealing with Lin Yi, it vanished like smoke into thin air. Since everyone had said it out loud, it was clear that Lin Yi did not care about them at all. If they did not know how to appreciate his kindness, they would be courting death. Although they were currently in the midst of a trial, and those elders would not sit and watch as they killed one another. If it was only crippling them, the elders would not care. Once they were crippled, their lives would be ruined. We admit defeat. Thinking of this, Shun Tianxiong, Bao Yu, and Chunin did not hesitate. They squatted down and admitted defeat. Looking at this scene, whether it was the senior or the new disciples, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes were filled with shock as they looked at Lin Yi. For hundreds of years, regardless of which sect it was, the senior disciples would bully the new disciples. No matter how talented or monstrous a person was, they would not be able to deal with the senior disciples. After all, those who could enter Cebu Gakuen were all geniuses and monstrous geniuses. They had 10 years more cultivation time than the new disciples. Generally speaking, no matter how monstrous a genius was, they would not be able to overcome the gap of 10 years. It was also because of this that Shun Tianxiong and the others were so arrogant. Unfortunately, they did not expect that there was another person who was not an ordinary person participating in the assessment. It could be said that Lin Yi had created history this time. That bastard. He actually defeated so many saints with a single slash despite being a fifth tribulation half-true saint. There were even 3 mid-stage saints. Too amazing. Yin Shihao did not know Lin Yi's strength before this, so he was excited when he saw this scene. Shun Tianxiong and the others' defeat meant that they would be able to get their points back. I didn't expect his strength to be so strong. When Shun Lingxiao saw this scene, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. When he recalled his arrogant appearance in the Shun family, his face immediately burned. What a slap to his face. He didn't expect Lin Yi to be so much stronger than him. No wonder, Lin, you didn't pay much attention to him before. I want you to apologize. Seeing that the 3 of them had admitted defeat, Lin Ye's expression did not change. He said indifferently, "If you don't apologize, I will let you know what cruelty is." Gulp. When the last 2 words fell, Shun Tianxiong and the others felt a chill run down their spines. Afraid that Lin Yi would make a move, they did not dare to hesitate. They clasped their hands together and said pitifully, "Sorry, brother. We were too arrogant just now. Seeing that we are all Cebu Gakuen's disciples, please spare us." Please for mercy sounded, and the older disciples closed their eyes in pain. They already understood that they had been completely defeated by Lin Yi this time. This made them despair, and their faces were filled with embarrassment. Even if they had lost to a late-stage saint, they would feel much better. Unfortunately, they had lost to a fifth tribulation half-true Saint Ant. If this matter were to spread out, it was hard to imagine how much they would be ridiculed to. Slap! A crisp sound rang in the air. Lin Ye's eyes were filled with anger, and he slapped Shun Tianxiong's face. Chapter 432. Shun Tianxiong was dumbfounded. He stared at Lin Yi in a daze. After a while, Shun Tianxiong felt like crying and asked helplessly, "Didn't I apologize? Why did you hit me?" Besides Shun Tianxiong, Chun and Baoyu felt their scalps go numb as they took a few steps back. They were afraid that Lin Yi would suddenly attack them. Being slapped in the face, that would be a total loss of face. To them, being slapped wasn't scary, as long as they could keep their face. With that thought, Chun and Baoyu took a few steps back and distanced themselves from Lin Yi and Shun Tianxiong. They didn't care about Shun Tianxiong. In their hearts, it would be best if Shun Tianxiong could absorb all of Lin Yi's firepower and beat him half to death. Then, they would have one less competitor. At the same time, Chun and Baoyu looked at each other and wondered why Lin Yi was angry. Amidst the cold laughter, Lin Yi said coldly, "I'm not asking you guys to apologize to me. Just now, you guys humiliated Silent Soul. Now, if she doesn't forgive you, you all have to." At this point, Lin Yi suddenly laughed coldly. The threat in his words was self-evident. Not far away, Silent Soul was extremely touched. She didn't think that Lin Yi would make so many people kneel and apologize for her. At this time, Shun Tianxiong and the others finally understood Lin Yi's intentions, and their mouths twitched. Looking at Silent Soul in confusion, Shun Tianxiong and the others were extremely depressed. If they were asked to apologize to Lin Yi, they could do it. After all, Lin Yi was stronger than them. But if they were asked to apologize to an ant whose realm couldn't be any lower, and a girl at that, they couldn't do it. They looked at each other with hesitation in their eyes. Moreover, with their strength, it was impossible for them to humiliate Silent Soul. They were unwilling to apologize now. Most of the people who humiliated Silent Soul were normal disciples, and they didn't want to be the scapegoat. But when they looked up and saw Lin Yi's murderous eyes, they were terrified. Especially Shun Tianxiong. He was already beaten so badly that he didn't dare to go against Lin Yi's wishes. Taking a deep breath, Shun Tianxiong sensed Lin Yi's concern for solitary spirit. With a plop, he knelt on the ground and cried out pitifully, "Miss, it was all my fault just now. I was blind. That's why I was so rude to you. Miss, please forgive me this once. I'm not human. It's all my mouth." Speaking of this, Shun Tianxiong got excited and slapped himself on the cheek again, causing it to swell up. Seeing this, Chun and Baoyu and the seniors were all shocked. They couldn't imagine that Shun Tianxiong, who had always been arrogant and despotic in the Sacred Martial Academy, would actually kneel in front of a woman and beg for mercy in such a humble manner. He even slapped his own face. They couldn't believe it. But they knew that it was the truth, because next they would have to beg for mercy and beg for the girl's forgiveness. Or else, they couldn't imagine what kind of cruel things Lin Yi would do to them. Not just the seniors' Silent Soul, Lin Yi and Sun Wuyu were all shocked. At first, Lin Yi and the others thought that Shun Tianxiong and the others would be forced to beg for mercy and apologize. But now that Shun Tianxiong knelt, they were all shocked. They couldn't say the words they had prepared. After a moment of silence, Silent Soul looked at Lin Yi and begged for mercy. At this point, Silent Soul didn't know what to do. If he let Shun Tianxiong go, wouldn't he be letting him off too easily? But if he didn't let him go, he didn't have the heart to do it. Noticing Silent Soul's pleading, Lin Yi said indifferently, "Is this considered begging for mercy?" Also, it wasn't just a few of you who were mocking Silent Soul. His voice suddenly turned cold. "In 30 breaths, the rest of you, if you don't apologize, you will all die." Hearing this, Shun Tianxiong, Chun and the seniors were all shocked. They panicked and didn't dare to say anything. Shun Tianxiong quickly waved his hand and signaled for everyone to beg for mercy. Noticing Shun Tianxiong's reminder, Chunin and Baoyu knew that enduring for a while was better than nothing. They clenched their teeth and followed Shun Tianxiong's example, kneeling on the ground with a bang. "Miss, it was all our fault. Please be magnanimous and let us go." As Chunin and Baoyu knelt down again, the faith in the hearts of the older students was gone, and they all began to wail in grief. Plop, plop. Following the crisp sound, one figure after another knelt down and begged for mercy. More than 50 people knelt down and begged for mercy. Seeing this scene, Silent Spirit was completely dumbstruck. He only felt incomparably refreshed, and his heart was like a flame. The freshmen were also stunned. They murmured and looked at Lin Yi blankly. At this moment, many of the freshmen were envious of Lin Yi. Every single one of them had fantasized about this scene, suppressing several people with his own strength and making a name for himself in the sacred martial academy. Seeing that everyone was so obedient, Lin Yi nodded and turned to Silent Soul. Silent Spirit, who was satisfied, knew that Lin Yi still had other things to do. Furthermore, they hadn't even robbed half of the 200-plus seniors team yet. Time was passing quickly. They wanted to find the rest of the seniors as soon as possible and didn't want to waste any more time. They nodded at Lin Yi. "Get up." Lin Yi's voice was indifferent. However, hearing this, everyone stood up and thanked Lin Yi. It was as if they had heard the best news in the world. "In view of your outstanding performance, all of you will be spared the death penalty," Lin Yi said indifferently. "Hand over your points. Otherwise, I'll cripple you." Hearing this, the uproar in the field suddenly quieted down. Every figure looked at Lin Yi with a strange gaze. Points were very important to everyone. They could beg for mercy and admit defeat, but if they had to hand over their points, it would be much more difficult. "What? You still want to resist?" Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. Following his words, 90,000 sword territory whizzed out and suppressed the seniors. After being injured, even Shun Tianxiong, Chunin, and Baoyu couldn't withstand Sun Wuyu's aura attack. Their bodies hurt, and they coughed violently. When they looked up again, their eyes were filled with despair. Chapter 433. Under the suppression of absolute power, no matter how unwilling Shun Tianxiong and the rest were, they had no choice but to obediently stretch out their hands and reveal their bracelets. Shun Tianxiong, Chunin, and Baoyu looked especially pained. After a few days of hunting, each of them had obtained close to 200,000 points. Naturally, they would not be happy to hand over so many points at once. However, at this moment, the situation was beyond their control. They were meat on the chopping block, and there was no way for them to resist. Lin Yi slowly stepped forward as he looked at Shun Tianxiong and the others. His eyes were filled with coldness, and his tone was extremely cold. "Hand over your points, or get kicked out by Sibu Gakuin?" Hearing the threat in Lin Yi's words, Shun Tianxiong and the rest were horrified. Their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Gulp! Swallowing his saliva, Shun Tianxiong suddenly said, "That's right. Lin Yi, you can't take our points." "Oh, why?" Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but raise his eyebrows. He did not remember Theta Scarabii saying that it was impossible to take the points of the older students. Theta Scarabii also did not say that there was a limit to how many points could be taken from the older students. "Previously, I took the points of more than 10 older students. Now you're telling me that I can't take your points?" Lin Yi's eyes turned cold, and his voice became even colder. "If you can't give me a proper explanation, don't blame me for being rude. This guy is really a devil." Hearing Lin Yi's words, many of the older students could not help but tremble violently. They did not expect Lin Yi to be so valiant. Before he took their points, he had already taken the points of the other older students. Yin Shihao, Shun Lingxiao, Zhang Tianheng, and the rest of the new students were also stunned. They looked at Lin Yi in shock. "Ha ha!" Shun Tianxiong laughed bitterly and said helplessly, Of course, you can take our points without limit. However, when your accumulated points reach 500,000 points, a ranking board will be triggered. At that time, the list will be ranked according to the points each person has. The coordinates of those in the top 10 will also be displayed. Oh, hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but frown. Theta Scarabii did not mention this, but Lin Yi could see that Shun Tianxiong was telling the truth. However, Lin Yi wasn't afraid. The only thing he was worried about was his coordinates being exposed. The other seniors would run the moment they saw him. In that case, he would get a lot less points. So what? Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi was incomparably cold. Shun Tianxiong said helplessly, "Brother, among the seniors, my strength can only be considered average. Among the seniors this time, there are more than 20 people who are stronger than me, especially those seniors from the inner sect. Every single one of them could easily defeat me. At that time, when your accumulated points reach a certain number, the ranking board will be triggered and your location will be exposed. You will be in danger." Haha. Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but reveal a cold expression and said indifferently, "Danger? Now that you mention it, I would like to see it for myself." The corner of Shun Tianxiong's mouth twitched violently. What was going on? Why was this guy so reckless? Hurry up and hand over your points. Otherwise, I will cripple you right now. Just as Shun Tianxiong was in a daze, Lin Yi bent down and looked at Shun Tianxiong indifferently. "I will hand it over." Hearing this, Shun Tianxiong did not dare to say anything else. He immediately raised his left hand and clashed their bracelets. Buzz! With a soft sound, the 220,000 points in Shun Tianxiong's hand flowed into Lin Ye's hand. Lin Ye's points went from 170,000 to 350,000. One had to admit that Shun Tianxiong and the rest were too rich. They were filthy rich. Lin Yi was shocked. He did not expect Shun Tianxiong and the rest to have so many points. Seeing the 176,000 points flowing into Lin Ye's hand, Shun Tianxiong's eyes turned red and he almost cried. Almost 200,000 points were enough for him to cultivate peacefully in Cebu Gakuen for a few months. He could even exchange his points for many sacred weapons and sacred pills that would greatly improve his strength. However, he didn't expect that after meeting Lin Yi, his points would once again return to around 40,000. It was not a small amount, but it was still difficult to support his expenses. After collecting Shun Tianxiong's points, Lin Yi ignored him and walked towards Chunin and Baoyu. Chunin and Baoyu were not as powerful as Shun Tianxiong. Seeing that Shun Tianxiong had handed over his points, they did not dare to resist and handed over their points as well. Then, it was the seniors' turn. It was like collecting vegetables. In just a moment, everyone's points had been collected by Lin Yi. The points in Lin Ye's hands had also reached 130,000. It was definitely a huge sum of money. Ding! Almost at the same time that Lin Yi obtained so many points, there was a sudden crisp sound from the bracelet. He looked down and saw a light screen popping up from the bracelet. It wasn't just Lin Yi. Everyone's bracelets started to flicker. In the next moment, a light screen appeared. Spiritual Hunter list activated. First place, Lin Yi, points 1365082. Current position, second place. Shengwan Yunxi, points 294782. Current position, third place. Qingyu, points 285890. Current position, fourth place. Muyi, points 248620. Current position, fifth place. Dao Feiyang, points 217650. Current position. Immediately after, a series of names appeared. The first place was shockingly Lin Yi. His points were more than 4 times that of the second place. From second to fifth place, the difference in points was not too great. Presumably, their strengths would not be too great either. As for sixth place, it dropped below 100,000 points all of a sudden. Looking further back, it was almost all tens of thousands and thousands of points. Roughly sweeping a glance at the Spiritual Hunter list, Lin Ye's originally restless battle intent was immediately splashed with a basin of cold water. From the looks of it, there were not many experts participating in the hunting war this time. Half the time had already passed, and his points were still so little. How was he going to earn points? Just through spirit beasts and natural treasures. The speed was a little too slow. Actually, on the spiritual hunter list, the reason why the top 5 could obtain so many points was largely because of snatching. Many new students, not only were they snatched by the seniors, after they obtained points again, they would also be snatched by the new students. Unless they joined together, otherwise, no one would help them. Lin Yi was even more valiant. Those who he snatched were all seniors. Therefore, the speed at which he collected points was so fast. However, Lin Yi was soon puzzled. According to Theta Scarabii, there were 20 people from Cebu Gakuin's inner sect. With their strength, how could their points be so little after a few days? Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi turned to look at Shun Tianxiong. His eyes were filled with curiosity and doubt. Chapter 434. When the Spirit Hunter list appeared, everyone, regardless of whether they were freshmen or seniors, paid close attention to it. However, when they saw that Lin Yi, who was in first place, already had 130,000 points, they were all shocked. How is this possible? I snatched hundreds of freshmen and killed a few Sage Stage Demon Venerables, but I only got 600,000 points. How could a freshman like him have so many points? Could this guy be a monster? I've long heard that there's a freshman who's extremely arrogant and specializes in robbing the seniors' teams. It seems that Lin Yi should be that person's name. He's also a freshman. How could he get so many points in just 7 days? What kind of heavenly treasure did he get? Who is this Lin Yi? Why haven't I heard of his name before? Looks like he's a dark horse again. But I, Shangwan Yinshi, am not someone to be trifled with. 130,000 points, this guy. Did he snatch the seniors' points? So fierce. For a moment, regardless of whether they were freshmen or seniors, the name Lin Yi was deeply imprinted in their minds. They had already regarded Lin Yi as their greatest opponent. This is too scary. Shun Tianxiong, Chun and Bao Yu, and the rest looked at Lin Yi in shock. Originally, they thought that Lin Yi would split the points equally between Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul. However, in the end, Lin Yi took all the points alone and successfully opened the Spear Hunter list, occupying the first place. That 130,000 points made their scalps tingle. Decades ago, they had heard that the Academy had held an activity similar to the hunting war. However, after it ended, the strongest disciple only got close to 1 million points. After exchanging the items, the remaining points were only a few tens of thousands. However, this time, Lin Yi had obtained so many points in the middle of the activity. It could be said that he had created a brand new history. The people on the hunting spirit roll shouldn't have so few points, right? Lin Yi said indifferently. You also said earlier that your strength isn't considered very strong among the seniors. You have more than 220,000 points. The others shouldn't have so little. Hearing this, Shun Tianxiong could not help but laugh bitterly. The names of the older students will not appear on the spiritual hunter list. This spirit hunter ranking is a special benefit for you freshmen. Oh, benefits? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and became curious. That's right, this is a benefit, Shun Tianxiong said in a deep voice. After the hunting war ends, anyone who enters the top 100 of the Spirit Hunter list will be rewarded with 500 points. The top 50 would be rewarded with 1,000 points. The top 20 would be rewarded with 2,000 points. The top 10 would be rewarded with 5,000 points. The top 5 would be rewarded with 7,000 points. Third place, 10,000 points. The second place will be rewarded with 15,000 points. The first place will be rewarded with 30,000 points. These rewards are very generous, especially the top 3. Those points are hard to come by even after 1 or 2 months. Hearing this, not only Lin Yi, but even Shun Lingxiao, Yin Shihao, and the rest were surprised. One had to admit that Cebu Gakuen treated those who were strong very well. Those who were weaker still had to worry about points. They had to raise their strength while earning points. This would affect their cultivation progress to a large extent. Those who were talented only needed to perform well and did not have to worry about points at all. This was like giving them away for free. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi suddenly smiled and said, "Now that I'm ranked first on the Hunter Spirit ranking, doesn't that mean that regardless of whether it's the new students or the older students, I will be treated as a fat sheep?" "That's right," Shen Tianxiong smiled bitterly. "What I meant just now was that after you activate the Spirit Hunter list, many people will notice you and even have designs on you. Although you're very strong and can defeat us with a single sword strike, you're still very strong. Cebu Gakuen has never lacked geniuses. There are dozens of people who are more powerful than me, especially those older students from the inner sect. One of them could defeat all of us. It will be a piece of cake." At this point, Shun Tianxiong's expression darkened. Thinking back, when he first joined Cebu Gakuen, he was also full of passion and looked forward to competing with others. Now, his passion had dissipated and he felt ashamed of his inferiority. There were too many evildoers and geniuses in Cebu Gakuen. As a result, many geniuses were unable to recover after a setback and disappeared. "Ha, we haven't even fought. How do you know that I'm not their match?" Lin Yi sneered and glanced at Shun Tianxiong with disdain. He said indifferently, "As a martial artist, you must have a heart that is never afraid. Even if you can't beat them, you must not be afraid." After saying this, Lin Yi waved his hand in disgust. "All right, all of you get lost. Since you answered so many questions for me, I'll let you off this time. Next time, if you dare to humiliate my people, I'll let you know what cruelty is." As soon as he finished speaking, many of the older students heaved a sigh of relief. They hurriedly got up and left with much difficulty. Shun Tianxiong, Chunin, and Baoyu looked at each other and left quickly as well. However, in Shun Tianxiong's heart, he felt even more ashamed. Lin Ye's words were like thunder, reverberating in his mind and striking at his nerves. "Congratulations on winning first place, Captain." After Shun Tianxiong and the rest left, Sun Wuyu grinned and approached Lin Yi. Silent Soul smiled sweetly and looked at Lin Yi. They were not surprised that Lin Yi was able to take first place. To them, it was more surprising that Lin Yi didn't win first place. Lin Yi sighed. "They can see where I am now. This is troublesome." "What's so troublesome about it?" Sun Wuyu grinned and said, "Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. As long as they don't send over 100 people at once, it'll be fine. With my current strength, dealing with dozens of them is not a problem. I'm not afraid of that." Lin Yi said helplessly, "I'm mainly afraid that they will run when they see me. If that's the case, how am I going to snatch their points?" The corner of Sun Wuyu's mouth twitched, and he laughed loudly. Shun Lingxiao, Zhang Tianheng, Yin Shihao, and the rest were stunned as they stared blankly at Lin Yi. This was the first time they met someone as confident as Lin Yi. But for some reason, after seeing Lin Yi defeating dozens of saints with his fifth tribulation half-true saint cultivation, they did not feel disgusted by Lin Yi's confidence. Instead, they trusted him. In their hearts, Lin Yi was already the number one person in this training. Cough, cough. Enduring the pain, Yin Shihao got up with difficulty and walked towards Lin Yi. He cupped his fists and said, "Many thanks for Brother Lin's help." Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but glance at Yin Shihao. A mysterious light flashed in his eyes. Chapter 435. Thank you, brothers, for saving us. Yin Shihao stepped forward and saluted Lin Yi respectfully. Although Lin Yi's realm was quite low, the strength he exerted was amazing. Moreover, he had a younger brother at the middle stage of the Saint realm, which showed his extraordinary strength. "We're all freshmen. You're welcome." Lin Yi waved his hand indifferently and said, "Next time, don't let those seniors take away all your points." "I'll be careful." Hearing this, Yin Shihao couldn't help but smile bitterly. He had heard Shun Tianxiong's words just now, which made him feel desperate. Shun Tianxiong was powerful. At least there were no match for him. However, among the 200 seniors, he was barely in the middle. If they encountered other seniors, how could they fight against them? For a moment, Yin Shihao looked up at Lin Yi and had already made up his mind to hold on to Lin Yi's thigh. At least in his opinion, except for Lin Yi, no one else could protect them. Mu Yi, whom they had always respected, had 3 times the points difference with Lin Yi. The difference in strength could be seen at a glance. At this time, Shun Lingxiao, Zhang Tianheng, and the others got up and also came over. Shun Lingxiao carefully sized up Lin Yi with a glance and suddenly said with a sigh, "I didn't expect that your strength is actually so formidable. I was a frog in a well and underestimated the heroes of the world." Hearing this, Lin Yi glanced at Shun Lingxiao strangely. He didn't expect that Shun Lingxiao, who had always been arrogant, would bow down to him. It seems that there are many geniuses here. Even Shun Lingxiao was shocked. For a moment, Lin Yi was curious about the rest of the freshmen. Shun Lingxiao was not weak. At this time, he had just broken through to the early stage of the Saint Realm, but he could compete with a disciple at the middle stage of the Saint Realm in Cebu Gakuin. This showed his talent. But even so, he was shocked and was willing to admit the excellence of others. "Take care of yourselves." Nodding slightly, Lin Yi was too lazy to say anything more to them. He turned around and led Sun Wuyu and the others away. Seeing this scene, Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao's mouths twitched. He was not giving them any face at all. "Brother, please wait." However, before Lin Yi and the others could leave, Zhang Tianheng took a step forward and called out. There were a few people behind him who glanced at Zhang Tianheng and then at Lin Yi. Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi turned his head and asked indifferently, "What is it?" Cough, cough. Zhang Tianheng coughed lightly and said hesitantly, "Our points were all snatched away by those seniors. Now that those points are in your hands, can you return them to us?" Hua. As soon as he finished speaking, Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao's expressions changed drastically. How could they not have thought of this? But after talking to Lin Yi just now, they could already tell that Lin Yi would definitely not give them the points. Otherwise, Lin Yi would not have left so quickly. If Lin Yi was weak, they might have said something. But now that Lin Yi was so powerful, they did not dare to say anything. They were afraid that if they angered Lin Yi, not only would they not be able to get the points, they might even get beaten up. Thinking of this, Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao quickly walked to Zhang Tianheng's side and wanted to pull him down. However, before they could do anything, Lin Yi's voice sounded, causing them to stop. "Return it to you." "Return it?" Lin Yi sneered and emphasized the word return. Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul sneered. Hearing this, the corners of Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao's mouth twitched. They could feel the anger of the freshmen behind them. Previously, Zhang Tianheng did not say anything, and they did not think too much about it. After all, it was the seniors who snatched their points, and they hated those seniors. But now that someone had pointed it out, they came to their senses. That's right, their points were all with Lin Yi now. Therefore, all the freshmen stood up and stared at Lin Yi and the others. Although they were weak, with only a dozen of them breaking through to the Saint Realm, the power of hundreds of Ninth Tribulation half-true saints was unimaginable. Dense holy aura fell like a giant mountain, pressing down on Lin Yi and the others. Silent Spirit's entire body trembled and involuntarily retreated a few steps. Her strength was not as good as Lin Yi and Yin Shihao. Ha! With a sneer, Lin Yi took a step forward, and in the next moment, 5 different domains exploded. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The 5 elements fused and burst out a special energy. Even the brilliant holy aura was scattered by the energy. In an instant, the holy aura around Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Silent Soul dissipated, and the pressure was relieved. "What?" Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi said indifferently, "You want to snatch my points?" "No, it's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding." Yin Shihao's face changed drastically, and he hurriedly shouted. He stepped forward and stood between Zhang Tianheng and Lin Yi. Brother Lin, leave quickly. Then, Yin Shihao turned to look at the freshman and shouted angrily, What are you doing? Did Brother Lin save us? Do you want to die? Hearing that, Zhang Tianheng frowned slightly. The freshmen were stunned, and the energy in their bodies dissipated. Only a few freshmen' faces changed slightly, and they glared at Yin Shihao. Huh? Lin Yi smiled indifferently. What do you mean? Zhang Tianheng hesitated, turned his head, and said seriously, Brother Lin, although we are grateful that you saved us, those points are still ours. But those points are ours after all. Can you return them to us? Ha ha ha! What a joke! Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but raise his head and laugh. Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul also laughed out loud. Interesting. You couldn't keep those points, and now that we got them, you want to take them back? TSK. We didn't steal those points from you. Why should we return them to you? Hearing that, Zhang Tianheng, Yin Shihao, and Shun Lingxiao's faces turned ugly. Including some of the freshmen, they were ashamed. Indeed, they could not blame others for not being able to keep their points. Why didn't you steal those points from us? 2 hours ago, they were still in our hands. Lin Yi, we are all freshmen. We should help each other. These points originally belonged to us. Since you've obtained them, you should return them to us. Don't tell me you want to go out alone. You don't want to go with us freshmen? At this point, Lin Yi's face darkened. Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul raised their eyebrows, and the corners of their mouths curled up, revealing a cold smile. Their threats might be able to deal with others, but if they wanted to threaten Lin Yi, it was simply wishful thinking. Bastard, who is it? Do you want to die? Chapter 436. Ha! Ha ha ha! Amidst his cold laughter, Lin Yi sized up the crowd. At this time, there were hundreds of freshmen and several people were talking. Lin Yi did not sense who was provoking the freshmen. However, it was obvious that those people had succeeded. The rest of the freshmen went crazy when they thought that their points could be returned to them, and there was a reasonable explanation. They did not care whether the reason was reasonable or not, and all of them waved their arms. That's right. We are all freshmen. We should help each other. Those points should be returned to us. In an instant, there were continuous shouts. Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao's faces became paler. If Lin Yi was not strong enough, perhaps they would do the same. However, at this time, they understood that Lin Yi was strong. With the strength of hundreds of them, they could not even defeat Shun Tianxiong. How could they compete with Lin Yi and Sun Wuyu? What's more, when Lin Yi dispelled the divine aura, he directly used the 5 elements territory. The surging territory pressure made the two of them feel terrified. Seeing that the situation was out of control, Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao looked at each other. They flew up and ran behind Lin Yi and the other two. Noticing this, Lin Yi was quite surprised and could not help but raise his eyebrows. Not far away, Zhang Tianheng frowned slightly and could not help but hesitate. The reason why he was pushed out was because he had those thoughts in his heart. Now that he saw Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao, they would rather give up on the freshmen they had spent so much time and effort to win over than go against Lin Yi. He couldn't help but be surprised. Soon, Zhang Tianheng made up his mind again. He did not believe that Lin Yi, who was also a freshman, would risk universal condemnation and openly attack them. In this way, Lin Yi was destined to fall out with all the freshmen. If their opponent was someone else and not Lin Yi, perhaps the result would be as they had guessed. Unfortunately, Lin Yi was not an ordinary person. Lin Yi had never thought of joining forces with the freshmen from the beginning, and he did not care about their opinions. Cough, cough. Zhang Tianheng waved his hand and stopped the shouts of the freshmen. He smiled at Lin Yi and said, Brother Lin, we are all freshmen. We should help each other. These points are not yours. Why don't you return them to us? As his voice fell, all the freshmen turned their eyes to Lin Yi. Their eyes were filled with hope. Ha ha! With a cold laugh, Lin Yi indifferently said, I have to say your imagination is really too perfect. Let me ask you who stole your points. Zhang Tianheng furrowed his brows. They were snatched away by the seniors. Since it was the seniors who stole your points, why don't you take them back yourselves? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. Instead, you want to steal my points. Why? Do you think that I, Lin Yi, am easy to bully? No. Zhang Tianhong's face was awkward as he continued. It's true that our points were stolen by the seniors, but now, those points are with you. You should at least return these points to us, right? We won't ask for more. We'll only take back the portion that was stolen from us. We won't touch the points that the seniors originally had. As his voice fell, the freshmen all shouted in unison, matching Zhang Tianhong's words. When he heard those shouts, Zhang Tianhong's confidence was suddenly boosted. However, some of the freshmen looked at each other and sneered. No one knew how many points they had lost previously. When the time came, they only needed to say a little more, and perhaps they could obtain even more points. Ha ha ha. Lin Yi laughed heartily as the expression in his eyes gradually turned cold. Previously, on account of the fact that they were all freshmen, he gave these people a chance and did not directly attack them. However, at this time, he no longer had any reason to do so. Interesting. You lost your points, and now you're asking me for them. Tis TSK. Why didn't you dare to ask the seniors for them earlier? I think you're just a bunch of trash who bully the weak and fear the strong. Cowards. At this point, Lin Ye's eyes were filled with disdain. You're the trash. Who? We're not trash. We're not cowards. When they heard this, many of the freshmen were enraged. As for the few troublemakers, they were ecstatic. The greater the grudge between the freshmen and Lin Yi, the greater their chances of obtaining benefits. Heh, if you're not trash, why don't you dare to ask the seniors for points? Lin Yi said indifferently. Why do you still dare to ask me for points now? The freshmen looked at each other and began to hesitate. At this time, they suddenly realized that the reason they had given before was really untenable. They lost their points because they were not strong enough. Now, they wanted to take back their points from Lin Yi. It was too unkind. However, the points were too important. Now that they had the chance to take it back, they were unwilling to give it up. After hesitating for a moment, the freshmen gritted their teeth and continued to make mistakes. They did not retreat. When they realized this, the freshmen with ulterior motives began to laugh coldly. Things were going according to their plan. Looks like you guys are determined to rob me of my points. After sweeping his gaze across the freshmen, Lin Yi said indifferently, since that's the case, I'll give you a chance. If you can defeat me, these points will naturally be yours. When they heard this, the freshmen could not help but hesitate. Even Zhang Tianhong's expression became awkward. They clearly saw Lin Yi's previous attack. That kind of strength was definitely not something they could contend against. In particular, the power of that sword seemed to be able to destroy the heavens and the earth. It made them lose their confidence. Therefore, when they heard that Lin Yi was going to attack, the freshmen's expressions changed drastically. They hurriedly took a few steps back. In a split second, those who had other intentions were also stunned. They looked at Lin Yi and the rest in shock. They could not believe that Lin Yi was still unwilling to compromise at this time. Is that guy not afraid of being boycotted by all of us freshmen? He still dares to attack at this time? As their eyes turned, the freshmen's hearts skipped a beat. They suddenly had an ominous premonition. It seemed that something very serious was going to happen to them. Everyone, don't attack. Suddenly, Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao stood up and stopped the crowd. In a moment, all the freshmen's gazes turned to Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao. Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Silent Soul also looked at them in confusion. Chapter 437. I understand everyone's feelings. After all, you've worked so hard for a few days. Now that the points are gone, you must be very uncomfortable. Yin Shihao raised his voice and shouted, but those points were snatched by the seniors. Now that Lin Yi and the rest have saved us, those points are their spoils of war. It's not our points. Brothers, don't think too much. What we need to do is to continue to improve our strength so that we can seek revenge on those seniors. Snatch all their points. That's right. Shun Lingxiao also raised his voice and shouted, "Those people are our enemies. We're all freshmen. We must not fight among ourselves. Otherwise, the seniors will be happy. The more disunited we are, the easier it will be for them to snatch our points." As his voice fell, the freshmen in the field all fell into deep thought. Lin Yi also looked at the two of them with interest. He did not expect that Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao would be able to think of this point. Touching his nose, Lin Yi crossed his arms in front of his chest and quietly looked at Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao. He wanted to see how the two of them would resolve this matter. "Everyone quiet down," Yin Shihao said in a low voice. "We can earn more points if we don't have them, but we can't fight among ourselves. Those seniors are stronger than us. We can only contend against them if we unite. Otherwise, in the end, all our points will be snatched away by them. You have seen the list from before." Shun Lingxiao continued. "As long as it is in the top 10 of the list, the geographical location will be clearly displayed. If we don't unite, when the time comes, those seniors will come to snatch our points one by one. None of us can escape." Hearing this, the freshmen all fell silent. Zhang Tianhang frowned slightly and took a few steps back. However, those people that had other intentions started to become anxious. Bah! Suddenly, there was a soft sound of contempt. "Shun Lingxiao, Yin Shihao, you two bastards, did you get some benefit from Lin Yi? Those points were accumulated by us bit by bit. Why can't we get them back? If we really want to unite for the sake of the big picture, then why can't Lin Yi pay the price? Those points originally belonged to us. Why didn't he return them to us?" Several voices sounded in succession. In an instant, Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao's faces changed drastically. "Nonsense! Bastard! This is sophistry." Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao were furious. They couldn't understand why someone would be so stupid as to provoke Lin Yi. Were they not afraid that Lin Yi would decisively take action and suppress all of them? This was Cebu Gakuen, not where they were originally from. Of those who could enter this place, which one of them was not decisive? Who could not be courageous? However, what the two of them could understand didn't mean that the other freshmen could understand. If they had such a strategy, they would not have followed the others. Therefore, when they heard those words, their emotions were stirred up. That's right. Since we have to consider the big picture, why don't we ask that guy to return our points? The two of you, speaking up for him like this, you must have received benefits. You're bullying us. In an instant, all the freshmen were angry and glared at Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao. Seeing this, Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao could only sigh helplessly. They looked at the crowd with disappointment and stepped back slightly, no longer caring about it. As for what would happen to the freshmen in the end, it was not something they could consider. Anyway, they had already done what they could and were extremely benevolent. TSK. Taking a step forward, Lin Yi took over the topic and said indifferently, "Moral coercion. But it doesn't matter. If you want to get your points, sure, I'll give you a chance. Let's do it." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi's expression did not change. He waved his right hand gently, and the 5 elements territory was activated. 5 different colors of light flowed around Lin Yi like starlight, illuminating his body and making him look like a deity. A surging saint aura rolled out, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. In addition to Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao, there were more than 10 people in the initial stage of the saint level. However, even they were frightened by the 5 elements territory and did not have the confidence to defeat him. Thud, 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 thud. Lin Yi slowly stepped forward. As Lin Yi approached the crowd, his rich saint aura suddenly descended and pressed down on the bodies of the many new students. In an instant, everyone below the saint level was oppressed by the strong saint aura and staggered back a few steps. Even the 10 saints felt the pressure. With a soft shout, the freshman did not dare to hesitate anymore. Seeing that Lin Yi had made his move, They all activated their respective sacred artifacts or techniques. Buzz! All kinds of domains erupted, and the biting cold saint aura swept out. However, as soon as they released their domains, the five elements territory that belonged to the five elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, trembled violently and weakened by a lot. These freshmen had comprehended 30 to 40,000 Tao domains at most, and some had even comprehended more than 10,000 Tao domains. In the face of a domain formed by the five elements territory, there was no way they could resist. It was like snow meeting the scorching sun. It was difficult to maintain their domains. This made them feel horrified and terrified. However, with the emergence of their domains, the Saint Aura blocked a lot of the impact for them. The Nine Tribulation, half-true Saint Freshman caught up. Bastard, you're clearly a freshman, but you're stealing our points like the seniors. You're too despicable. That's right, your actions are simply destroying the unity between us freshmen. In an instant, there was another round of angry curses directed at Lin Yi. Hearing this, Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul could not help but smile. Sun Wuyu, aren't you going to help young master? After laughing, Silent Soul bumped Sun Wuyu's shoulder. There were too many people. Even if Silent Soul believed in Lin Yi, he was still a little worried. Sun Wuyu grinned and said, "Believe in Captain. With Captain's strength, isn't it easy to deal with him?" As soon as he finished speaking, hundreds of people, under the lead of more than 10 saints, had already surrounded Lin Yi. Strong saint aura like a waterfall fell endlessly, oppressing Lin Yi. Buzz! However, the five elements territory was activated and suddenly eliminated all the saint aura. Under the illumination of the light, Lin Yi was like a god. A sonorous sound rang out, and a set of battle armor quietly appeared on his body. Chapter 438. The Supreme Sacred Armor and Blazing Flame appeared at the same time. Lin Yi was wearing the sacred armor and holding the blazing flame sword. His entire body was shrouded in light, and he looked like a god descending to earth. Although there were many of them, most of them had not even reached the level of a saint. With Lin Yi's strength, it would not take much effort to defeat them. When the gap in strength reached a certain level, one move was all it would take to defeat all of them. Even Sun Wuyu could shatter the void around them in 2 moves, making them completely lose the ability to resist. This, seeing that Lin Yi was fully armed and was about to attack, the new students who had other thoughts suddenly became nervous. They were not stupid. They knew that if they really fought, they would definitely not be Lin Yi's match. The reason why they were so arrogant was purely because they thought that Lin Yi would not dare to attack them in the name of uniting the new students. However, they did not expect that Lin Yi would not care about uniting the new students and would actually attack them. Hiss! Damn it, does this guy not know fear? Damn it! If we really fight, we are no match for him. What should we do? While thinking nervously, the new students who had other thoughts finally became afraid. After a while, they stepped back slightly and quietly distanced themselves from the other new students. Zhang Tianheng led the new students and stood in front of Lin Yi. At this moment, Zhang Tianheng's emotions were very complicated, and his expression was strange. Brother Lin, we are all new students, and these points were originally ours. Now, we just want our points back, and you're not even willing to give them to us? Zhang Tianheng frowned. He did not want to fight with Lin Yi, so he hesitated and said what was in his heart. Hearing this, Lin Yi was stunned at first, then he laughed out loud. Zhang Tianheng, are you still a child? Don't you know that every wrong has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor? I am not robbing you of your points, so why are you not united? Why should I return them to you? If you have the ability, go find the older students yourselves. Lin Yi said indifferently. These points were all obtained from the older students. They're my spoils of war. You can have them if you want, but you have to defeat me. You win. Gritting his teeth, Zhang Tianheng shouted and leaped up. In the next moment, his hands were like blades, and blazing flames erupted. Hoo hoo hoo! The flames condensed and transformed into two flaming sabers in the blink of an eye. Then, they slashed down towards Lin Yi. "Let's attack together." Seeing that Zhang Tianheng had made his move, the rest of the freshmen also erupted. In an instant, all kinds of attacks fell. The whistling sound of the wind and the powerful holy aura were like a rain of arrows, falling one after another, smashing towards Lin Yi. As the wind howled, Lin Yi raised his head. Despite facing such a powerful attack, he did not feel the slightest fluctuation in his heart. In his opinion, these attacks were simply too weak. Raising his hand slightly, Lin Yi's mind moved, and the five elements domain spread out. Buzz! Multicolored light screens swept out and spread outwards. Almost instantly, it collided with those attacks. Bang! Following a crisp sound, those attacks quickly dissipated like ice meeting the scorching sun. In just a dozen breaths of time, those attacks had all been eliminated. The five elements domain did not slow down and continued to spread outwards. In the blink of an eye, it hit Zhang Tianheng and the rest of the freshmen. Oh no! Seeing this scene, the expressions of those freshmen who had second thoughts changed drastically. They hurriedly retreated and completely distanced themselves from the rest of the freshmen. Almost at the same time as they retreated, the hundreds of freshmen were blasted away by the five elements domain. Like kites with broken strings, hundreds of figures flew out together. The scene was rather spectacular. Buzz! At the same time, a sword aura swept across the sky. The sharp sword aura suddenly swept across the space and slashed through everyone. Poochie! Poochie! Blood splattered everywhere. In just a dozen breaths of time, the hundreds of figures were all swept by the sword aura. Amidst the shrill screams, the hundreds of freshmen felt extreme pain. Their bodies fell to the ground with a loud bang. As soon as they landed, the freshmen spat out a large mouthful of blood. Their bodies felt as if their bones had fallen apart. The pain was unbearable, and they could not even stand up. As for the skin on their bodies, it had been torn apart by the sword aura. Their bodies were drenched in blood, and it was a horrifying sight. The scorching flames burned their wounds. Weak, too weak. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi could not help but frown and shake his head. He had thought that these people would be able to unleash some kind of power. He had even summoned the supreme sacred armor. He did not expect that they would not even be able to withstand one strike from him. It had to be said that although they had passed the Cebu Gakuin's assessment, they were still too weak compared to those godly figures. In fact, in this group of people, other than Zhang Tianheng, the rest of them were no match for Zhang Ruoxu, who had been defeated by him earlier. Sighing in disappointment, Lin Yi slowly retracted the blazing flames and dispersed the supreme sacred armor, leaving only the five elements domain. In the field, other than Zhang Tianheng, no one else could still stand on the ground. Even the few freshmen who had purposely distanced themselves from them had been swept by the sword aura. Their bodies were covered in blood, and they looked extremely miserable. Even Zhang Tianheng had used all his means. His body and mind were exhausted as he looked at Lin Yi in horror. Zhang Tianheng knew that he was no match for Lin Yi. However, he did not expect that Lin Yi would only use one strike to defeat him. In fact, the power that Lin Yi had unleashed just now was not considered weak. The five elements domain was a powerful existence that combined five different domains. Even if it was just a shockwave, the power that it contained was not any weaker than the Sky Destroyer finger or the Celestial Emperor's fist. In addition, the Sky Sword 12 styles had been unleashed under the Sky Sword Divine Constitution. That strike had unleashed most of Lin Yi's power. Gulp! Zhang Tianheng swallowed a mouthful of saliva and raised his head. He looked at Lin Yi's eyes, which were filled with shock. "Now, do you still want points?" Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi looked at everyone coldly and spoke in an extremely cold tone. Hearing that, Zhang Tianheng could not help but smile bitterly. At this time, he finally understood why Shen Lingxiao and Yin Shihao had given up so decisively. With Lin Yi's strength, he was not someone that they could control. It was purely a dream to get back the points. Moreover, they had no reason to do so. Why should they hand over the points that others had taken from the seniors? I give up. Letting out a sigh of relief, Zhang Tianheng felt his vision turn black. He immediately fainted and his body fell limply to the ground. As for the freshmen, they were completely terrified and did not dare to lift their heads to look at Lin Yi. In their hearts, they were filled with regret. If it were not for the fact that they had to get back the points, they would not have suffered such serious injuries. Now, not only did they not get the points, but they also suffered such serious injuries. How could they get the points again? Chapter 439. Swoosh, swoosh. Several figures shuttled through the mountains nimbly. The three people at the front were shockingly Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Solitary Spirit. Behind them, two figures followed them closely. The two figures were Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao. Since they separated, Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao had been following Lin Yi and the others, unwilling to leave. Lin Yi and the others were naturally aware of this, and kept trying to shake off Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao. However, Shun Lingxiao and the others were not weak, and were no worse than the ordinary middle-stage saints. It was difficult for Lin Yi to shake them off. After being followed for a quarter of an hour, Lin Yi finally exploded. He stopped moving forward and stopped in his tracks. However, when Lin Yi and the others stopped moving forward, Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao also quickly stopped, pretending to meditate and adjust their breath. In an instant, Lin Yi, Sun Wuyu, and Silent Soul looked very strange. Did they think they were fools? Ahem. With an awkward cough, Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao got up, looked at Lin Yi and the others and laughed. Passing by, purely passing by. I'd be a fool to believe you. Sun Wuyu curled his lips and said, You've been following us. What do you want to do? Lin Yi glanced at the two, did not speak, and just looked at Shun Lingxiao with interest. Being looked at by Lin Yi like this, Shun Lingxiao's expression became more and more awkward. He suddenly remembered that when they first met, he was quite disdainful of Lin Yi. Until the later assessment, he did not pay much attention to Lin Yi. He did not expect that even after breaking through, he was still no match for Lin Yi. Shun Lingxiao was very embarrassed. If Yin Shihao had not stopped him, he would have beaten him up. That, Yin Shihao rolled his eyes and suddenly said, We are all freshmen. We should stick together. Sun Wuyu said coldly, There's no need for that. Just leave. Cough, cough, don't say that. Yin Shihao quickly waved his hand and said, All right, I wonder if the three of you still need someone to help you. An assistant? Hearing this, Sun Wuyu could not help but be surprised. He immediately sized up Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao with a strange look. In a split second, Shun Lingxiao's face became more and more ashamed. Noticing this, Sun Wuyu couldn't help but laugh. Sun Wuyu had seen Shun Lingxiao before and knew that he was quite arrogant. Therefore, he was quite surprised to see that Shun Lingxiao was willing to follow Lin Yi. Cough, cough. Hearing Sun Wuyu's laughter, Shun Lingxiao suddenly felt embarrassed. Are you sure you want to follow me? Lin Yi suddenly took a step forward and stared at Yin Shihao. After the previous contact, Lin Yi had already seen that Shun Lingxiao was quite convinced by Yin Shihao. That's right, Yin Shihao said in a deep voice. Your strength is very strong, and you are ruthless. Ordinary people, in order to build a good relationship with the freshmen, most of them would choose to compromise when they see so many people together. But you didn't. It's also because of this that I thought of coming to seek refuge with you. Since Lin Yi had made it clear, Yin Shihao also let go and directly explained everything. That's right. Shun Lingxiao nodded slightly. He also admired Lin Yi in his heart. Asking himself honestly, Shun Lingxiao believed that even if he had such strong strength, he would not completely break with the freshmen. When he encountered such a situation, he would definitely be restrained. Therefore, he admired Lin Yi's domineering behavior very much. It was also because of this, in addition to the fact that Lin Yi and Sun Wuyu were strong and could lead them to get more points, that Shen Lingxiao agreed with Yin Shihao's idea to come to Lin Yi. One must know that previously he looked down on Lin Yi. Now that he wanted to come to Lin Yi, he was under a lot of pressure. Since you are sincere, then I will accept you, Lin Yi said indifferently. However, I will not return the points you have previously. If you want points, you will have to work hard in the future. Or you can help me find the whereabouts of the demonic beasts and heaven and earth treasures. After you find them, I will distribute them to you according to your contribution. Or you can find the location of the seniors and lead me to them. Speaking of this, Lin Yi could not help but smile. Originally, when he was on the list, the seniors could see his position. Most of the seniors would definitely avoid him when they saw that he had so many points. In addition, he had also robbed many seniors. Once news of him spread out, no seniors would dare to come to him. Even those seniors in the inner sect would not come to Lin Yi directly for safety reasons. Instead, they would first make a move on others. Therefore, if he could subdue Yin Shihao and Shen Lingxiao, it would be an opportunity for Lin Yi. He could totally let Yin Shihao and Shen Lingxiao go out to find the location of the seniors. Once they knew, with his speed, those people would not be able to escape even if they wanted to. Hearing Lin Ye's words, Shen Lingxiao and Yin Shihao were both stunned. Their faces were full of shock. Most freshmen would think of how to escape from the seniors. Previously, Lin Yi was able to defeat the seniors single-handedly. This already shocked them. Now, Lin Yi actually wanted to take the initiative to find them. This shocked them even more. Gulp. Yin Shihao nervously swallowed a mouthful of saliva and suddenly asked, "Brother Lin, may I take the liberty to ask, where did you get those points from?" As his voice fell, Shen Lingxiao's body trembled. A shocking thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Of course, I snatched them from the seniors. Lin Yi said indifferently, "Although I will not get close to the freshmen, I will not take the initiative to snatch their points. After all, we are all freshmen. In the future, when we enter Cebu Gakuen, we will need to support and help each other. Of course, if they take the initiative to provoke me, I will not be merciful." Hiss! Hearing Lin Ye's words, Shen Lingxiao and Yin Shihao both sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes were filled with shock as they looked at Lin Yi. They did not expect Lin Yi to be so valiant. He actually dared to take the initiative to snatch the seniors' points. "I finally understand why you have so many points in your hands." Yin Shihao and Shen Lingxiao smiled bitterly. At the beginning, they thought that Lin Yi had a special ability to discover heaven and earth treasures. That was why he could collect so many points. They did not expect that Lin Ye's points were all snatched from the hands of others. However, when they thought of this, the blood in their bodies surged with excitement, making their hearts burn. Scared, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he looked at Shen Lingxiao and Yin Shihao. Scared, Yin Shihao and Shen Lingxiao's faces changed slightly. They patted their chests and said, "Oh, what are we scared of? Let's do it. Brother Lin, we will follow you from now on." Chapter 440. We're all students of Cebu Gakuen. They just came in a few years earlier than us, and they're not even the best of the best. Why should we be afraid of them? Shen Lingxiao sneered, his face full of confidence. Seeing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. He wouldn't accept cowards. Fortunately, Shen Lingxiao and Yin Shihao didn't disappoint him. It had to be said that Shen Lingxiao and Yin Shihao were not weak. They had just broken through to the beginner stage of the Saint Realm, but they were able to compete with those who had cultivated in Cebu Gakuen for 10 years. It was clear that they were talented. If there were no accidents, they would definitely be able to enter the inner courtyard with their talent. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't refuse to accept these two as his underlings. Of course, Lin Yi didn't trust them too much at the beginning and was quite guarded. "If you're not afraid, then it's easy." Lin Yi smiled and said, "Welcome to the team. This is my team member, Sun Wuyu, a mid-stage saint. This is Silent Soul. Her strength is a little special, so I won't introduce her." After introducing Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul, Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao quickly greeted them. To them, Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul were veterans, so they naturally had to treat them with respect. At the same time, they suddenly realized that Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul didn't have bracelets on their hands, which shocked them. They originally thought that Lin Yi was squeezing Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul's labor and gathering their points in his hands. But they never thought that Lin Yi wasn't squeezing Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul, but was spending his own precious points to support them. After entering Cebu Gakuen, people like Sun Wuyu who were brought in would not be able to obtain any points. No matter how many demonic beasts they killed or how many heavenly treasures they obtained, they would not be able to exchange them for points. On the contrary, the amount of points they needed to spend would be doubled. It could be said that they were very strict. In the past few decades, very few people would bring people in. It wasn't worth it. It was a waste of points, and it wouldn't be of any use. Therefore, Shun Lingxiao and Yin Shihao became more and more impressed with Lin Yi. From this point alone, it could be seen that Lin Yi valued friendship and loyalty. After the introductions, Lin Yi's group of 5 continued their journey towards the depths of the divine spiritual mountain range. One had to admit that Yin Shihao had a unique ability when it came to sensing things. Under his lead, Lin Yi and his crew had found more than 10 natural resources in just 2 hours. They had even found the main ingredient of saint-level pill. It was extremely precious and was directly exchanged for 5,000 points. With the addition of the 2 of them, Lin Yi did not keep the points for himself. Instead, he shared them with Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao. Due to Yin Shihao's great contribution, Lin Yi gave him a little more points, which scared Yin Shihao so much that he didn't dare to take it. After familiarizing himself with the surroundings, Yin Shihao's speed in finding heavenly treasures became even faster. The speed at which their points rose was like a rocket, rising rapidly. This caused Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao to be incomparably astonished. In the past, even if they knew the location of the heavenly treasures, they would have to deal with the guardian demonic beasts and would not be able to obtain points so quickly. But now, the speed at which their points were rising was like a dream, and they didn't dare to believe it. After 2 days of searching for heavenly treasures, Yin Shihao finally found traces of some older students. Immediately, Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao personally acted as bait, entangling that group of older students. In the beginning, when that group of older students saw that it was only Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao, they were immediately amused. They surrounded them, wanted to toy with the 2 of them, and snatch their points. However, they did not expect that danger was also approaching them. A moment later, Lin Yi and Sun Wuyu arrived. Piercingly cold sword qi was vast and mighty, crushing that group of older students in an instant. 5 days' time passed in a flash. There were only 2 days left of the 15 days of the hunting war. In these 5 days, Lin Yi, under the guidance of Yin Shihao's keen perception, plundered close to 100 older students and obtained more than 1 million points. He left everyone else in the dust on the hunting spirit list, taking the lead alone. And Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao also got close to 200,000 points, and both rushed to the top 20 of the hunting spirit list. This made Zhang Tianhang and the rest, who followed Yin Shihao previously, extremely surprised. They could not imagine that Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao, whose points were already snatched clean by the older students, actually rushed to the hunting spirit list in a short 5 days. Thinking back again, after Lin Yi left, Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao both chased after him swiftly. Everyone instantly guessed that Yin Shihao and Shun Lingxiao must have followed Lin Yi. This made them extremely envious and extremely regretful, especially Zhang Tianhang. In his opinion, his strength was not weak either. If he did not stand out that day and followed Lin Yi instead, perhaps the person on the hunting spirit list today would be him. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. After those freshmen were injured by Lin Yi, their injuries were serious. Not to mention snatching points, even contending with the demonic beasts was very difficult. Until now, Their injuries had not fully recovered. It could be said that their hunting war trip this time was already over. They no longer had any ability to obtain any more points. If they were to forcefully fight against the demonic beasts, only death would await them. Those who did not dare to hate Lin, you could only transfer all their hatred onto Zhang Tianheng. Zhang Tianheng, who had also suffered serious injuries, did not dare to stay any longer. He could only leave and walk alone in the divine spirit mountains. These small interludes naturally would not affect the others. Within 5 days, the rest of the older students were also crazily snatching the points of the freshmen. According to their rankings on the hunting spirit list, from low to high, they were tracking their positions. In the first 2 days, those freshmen were caught unprepared. But following the change of names on the hunting spirit list, the rest of the freshmen immediately reacted and formed an alliance. They laid out an inescapable net together, waiting for those older students to deliver themselves to their doorstep. However, those older students were not to be trifled with. They had used the freshmen's tactics many years ago. After a brief observation, they discovered that the top 10 freshmen had mostly gathered together. They instantly understood that this was a trap for them. In a split second, those older students beat them at their own game and gathered the majority of the freshmen. Over 100 saints, in addition to 20 inner sect disciples, they majestically charged forward. The curtains of a reign of terror were about to be drawn. Of course, while this was happening, Lin Yi did not remain idle. Other than killing and snatching the points of the older students, they were also constantly observing their movements. Sensing that the great battle was about to begin, Lin Yi led Sun Wuyu, Yin Shihao, and the other two as they quietly followed. Chapter 441. Hundreds of figures sat cross-legged in the spacious forest. They were densely packed and looked extremely intimidating. Dense Saint Aura gathered here. Ordinary sage-to-be did not dare to come close and sat far away. These people were the new students who were participating in the hunt. Everyone's expression was solemn and serious. They maintained their abundant energy and prepared for the upcoming fierce battle. The ordinary seniors were not scary. What they were really worried about were the inner sect disciples. Anyone who could enter the inner sect was definitely more talented than the outer sect disciples. In addition, their cultivation level was also higher. Other than using the human wave tactic, the outstanding students among the new students didn't have any confidence in using other methods to deal with the older students. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, the sound of wind whistling could be heard in the air. The many new students raised their heads and looked over, only to see dozens of figures rushing over from the distance like lightning. In just a few breaths, those figures had already arrived above the new students and looked at them coldly. There were not many of those figures, only about 40 of them. Every one of them exuded a powerful saint aura that made one tremble with fear. Even the new students who had broken through to the saint stage felt the pressure. Their breathing suddenly tightened and their hearts beat with difficulty. SSS, these seniors should be the inner sect disciples of Cebu Gakuin. Sensing this, the new students clenched their fists and slowly stood up. They stared at the 40 figures. Although they had a feeling that none of them would be a match for those people in a one-on-one fight, they had the advantage in numbers. If they really fought, the outcome would be uncertain. Moreover, they had secretly prepared an ambush and a formation. They were not very afraid. TSK Tisk. More than 40 figures glanced at the 1,000 freshmen and immediately burst into laughter. The ear-piercing laughter reverberated, causing the new students to frown. Interesting. Among the seniors, a young man in a purple robe stepped forward and appeared in front of the new students. You dare to go against us with just these few people? Call out the people who are hiding in the dark. Let me see if you can pique my interest. As he spoke, the young man in a purple robe yawned. His expression was indifferent, as if he did not take the new student seriously. All of a sudden, the group of freshmen flew into a rage. Before they participated in the test, Every one of them was a well-known figure in their respective regions. Well, had they ever been ignored like this? That purple-robed youth's words were like gunpowder, instantly igniting the anger in the depths of their hearts. Bastard, you just joined Cebu Gakuen 10 years earlier than us. What's there to be proud of? 10 years later, we'll beat you up like a dog. All the new students were enraged. They stood up abruptly and pointed at the purple-robed young man. They wished they could attack him directly. It's just over 40 people. How dare they be so arrogant? Not to mention that we have an ambush. Even if we didn't, just the thousands of us are enough to kill all of you. Amidst the angry roars, a few proud and arrogant saints among the freshmen could not hold back any longer. They stomped their feet on the ground and shot into the air like cannonballs. Buzz! The next moment, powerful saintly auras surged and turned into several giant dragons. They roared and rushed toward the purple-robed young man. Not good. Stop it. Seeing this scene, the leader of the new students, Shangwan Yunqi, who was ranked second on the hunter's spiritual ranking, became nervous and hurriedly shouted. However, those people were in a rage, and he could not stop them. He could only watch as those peak early-stage saints charged toward the purple-robed young man. Rumble. The powerful, saintly aura was like the might of the heavens. It rolled down, and a biting cold wind swept across the sky, blowing the purple-robed young man's hair. However, in the face of that attack, the purple-robed young man's expression did not change. The people behind him also looked disdainful. Boom, boom, boom. The attacks came at high speed. Just as they were about to land, the purple-robed young man gently raised his right hand. In an instant, the entire space seemed to have frozen. Those attacks came to an abrupt halt and stopped in their tracks. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A cool breeze blew, and in the next moment, those attacks seemed to have been blown away by the cool breeze and disappeared. Boom! At the same time, after the cool breeze blew out, it was like a violent cold wind. It was like ice blades that instantly pierced the bodies of those new students. In an instant, those new students felt as if their skin had been cut open. They were in excruciating pain, and they let out shrill screams. Weak, too weak. The purple-robed young man sighed and shook his head. He gently waved his right hand, and another bolt of purple lightning bloomed. With a crackling sound, it whistled and suddenly condensed into a huge snake. It opened its bloody mouth and bit at those new students. Flying saber, Mui, hurry up and save them. Seeing this scene, Shangwan Yunqi shouted softly. He also stomped his feet on the ground and flew up with a swoosh. As he waved his hands, 2 long whips appeared. They quickly swept through the air and lashed at the huge snake. At the same time, a saber light soared into the sky. An emerald green light appeared and absorbed those new students within it. Buzz, buzz. The saber light soared into the sky. Its sharp aura was like a flying sword that constantly slapped the huge snake's body. Flying saber dance. In the crisp voice, the saber light seemed to be dancing. The sharp saber blade madly slashed the huge snake's body, and there were sizzling sounds and sparks. Bang! Kacha! Kacha! A crisp sound rang out. Under the entanglement of the long whips and the sharp attacks of the saber light, the huge snake only resisted for a moment before it shattered with a loud bang. However, seeing this scene, the purple-robed young man's expression did not change. He only clapped his hands and looked at everyone with interest. Buzz! The emerald green light dissipated and the dozen or so new students landed safely on the ground. Seeing this scene, Shangwan Yunqi, Muyi, and Flying Saber let out a long sigh of relief. If they had lost a few experts before the battle began, they would be in big trouble. The 3 of you should be ranked in the top 5 of the Spirit Hunter list, right? The purple-robed young man looked at Shangwan Yunqi, Muyi, and Flying Saber and suddenly said, "Seeing you 3, I'm suddenly curious. What kind of genius is ranked first on the Spirit Hunter list? I have to say, although you have recruited many students this year, Your qualifications are better than before. With the strength of the three of you, you can break through to the mid-stage Saint realm after just 10 days of the assessment. Moreover, your foundation is not lacking. In the past few batches, you have a chance to fight for first place. Chapter 442. It's a pity you met me this time. The purple-robed young man looked rather proud when he said that. Saint aura flowed out of his body. Boom! In an instant, everyone, including Shangguan Yunqi and the half-saints, felt as if a huge mountain had fallen on their backs. Their breathing quickened. Shangguan Yunqi and the others were horrified. They looked at the purple-robed young man with fear in their eyes. Surprisingly, that young man was at the peak of the late stage of the Saint realm. Moreover, he was talented and had studied in the inner sect for 10 years. The power he could unleash was not much weaker than an ordinary peak saint. Shangguan Yunqi and the others were shocked beyond words. Their mouths were agape as they stared at the purple-robed young man in a daze. They did not expect the purple-robed young man to be a peak saint. In their minds, this was just a hunt for the freshmen. Even if the seniors were obstacles for the freshmen, there should not be any strong opponents. Although the seniors they had met earlier were strong, they were not undefeatable. As long as they were united, they still had a high chance of winning. But now, a peak saint had suddenly appeared, which made them despair. When the difference in strength reached a certain level, no matter how many people there were, even if they attacked together, they would not be able to make up for the difference. What's more, this time, they had only roped in 4,000 new students. They were ambitious, but it did not mean that all the freshmen had the same ambition. Of course, there were some freshmen who were too severely injured and could not do anything. Ha ha ha! The purple-robed young man guffawed when he sensed the shock on Shangguan Yunqi and the others. He waved his hand, and the 40 people behind him spread out with a swoosh. They had turned the tables and surrounded the 1,000 freshmen. At this moment, the freshmen were terrified. They did not dare to resist at all. Regardless of whether they were old or young, they still staggered back a few steps. Ha ha ha! Trash, a bunch of trash. When they saw this scene, the 40-plus older students all laughed coldly. Their eyes were filled with disdain. However, their disdain and sneers provoked the freshmen. No matter how terrified they were all geniuses and monsters that had been praised before. Now that they heard themselves being humiliated like this, they simply could not accept it. Even though they knew very well that it was very likely that they would not be a match for him, they still clenched their teeth and took a step forward, glaring angrily at the 40-plus older students in the air. In the next moment, a surging saint aura gushed out of the new students. Rumble. Countless saint auras gathered together and condensed into a powerful force that soared into the sky. The purple-robed young man and many senior students were shocked and involuntarily took a few steps back. Realizing this, Shangguan Yunqi, Muyi, and the others looked at each other and nodded. They had already made up their minds. Interesting. The purple-robed young man was slightly surprised. He immediately raised his right hand, and in the next moment, surging saint aura surged and turned into a huge purple palm. The moment the purple palm appeared, it slapped towards the numerous new students. The brilliant saint aura gave people a strong sense of oppression. Attack! Seeing this, Shangguan Yunqi and the others knew that they couldn't resist, so they immediately shouted, "Activate the formation!" Beep! 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 As his voice fell, dozens of rays of light suddenly appeared in the entire space. The rays of light were intense and instantly turned into dozens of formations. They intertwined and suddenly wrapped around the huge purple palm. At the same time, more and more figures appeared from all directions. They were densely packed and surrounded the 40 over-senior students. In just a few breaths of time, the situation on the field had reversed again. A total of 4,000 demi-saints and more than 500 saints floated in the air, each forming a formation that surrounded the purple-robed young man and the others. The biting cold Saint aura and the sharp formation made people tremble with fear. In an instant, many of the older students frowned slightly and revealed a panicked look. They could not help but look at the purple-robed young man. When they realized that the purple-robed young man's expression was normal, they let out a long sigh of relief. The purple-robed young man was their backbone. Amidst the cold laughter, the purple-robed young man looked at the crowd and praised. Not bad. Not bad at all. You've gathered so many people. There was no one as outstanding as you in the previous batches. But unfortunately, your strength is too weak. The purple-robed young man's expression did not change. He said indifferently, if you had more than 4,000 saints, perhaps I would have no choice but to leave. But it's only 500 saints. If you want to defeat me, it's still very difficult. Hearing this, many of the freshmen could not help but reveal a slightly shocked expression. Their beliefs were shaken, and they could not help but doubt themselves. Oomph. Noticing this, Shangguan Yunshi quickly shouted, whether you can defeat me or not, we'll talk about it after we fight. You're just trying to show off. I think you're the ant. The purple-robed young man was not angry at all. He clapped his hands and said with a smile, I have to say, you're very outstanding, but unfortunately, the tricks you're playing are all left over from our previous games. Do you really think that we don't know that you have an ambush? Hearing this, Shangguan Yunshi, Muyi, and Dao Feiyang looked at each other and suddenly had an ominous feeling in their hearts. The purple-robed young man laughed loudly. The powerhouses on the hunter list have all gathered here. We already knew that you wanted to be bait to lure us here. You set a trap for us, but aren't you also setting a trap for yourself? Hearing the purple-robed young man's presumptuous laughter, Shangguan Yunshi, Muyi, and Dao Feiyang were shocked. Their expressions changed drastically, and they did not dare to delay any longer. They immediately shouted, Brothers, attack! Hurry up and kill them! As soon as they finished speaking, those who formed the formation activated the formation. Ray after ray of golden light fell on the purple-robed young man and the others. Those who acted alone each summoned their sacred artifacts and territories. They gritted their teeth and went all out to erupt with their strongest attacks. They all understood that only by defeating the purple-robed young man could they keep their points and become stronger. Rumble! For a time, a strong attack fell from the sky. The rich saint aura caused the entire space to tremble and shatter. As soon as they felt the attack, more than 40 seniors could not withstand it. Their faces turned pale and they kept retreating. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.